Chapter 403. Without spirit, one would lack strength. Without energy, there was no divine light. Spirit, chi, and spirit were indispensable to martial artists. The three depended on each other and promoted each other. Zhou Fan didn't know kung fu, nor did he know anything about inner force. However, he could tell from the name that the soulless attraction was obviously meant to attract people's souls. If a person lost his soul, it was equivalent to losing his essence, chi, and spirit. What was the difference between him and a useless person? The worst thing was that this thing fused with the blood and destroyed the human body's hematopoietic function. Without the ability to produce blood, how long could one live? Zhou Fan didn't have time to study this. He stretched out his hand and said, "I'll listen to you. I've completed the task. Give me the antidote, quickly give me the antidote. I feel like I'm going to die, I'm going to die." The pill that the black-robed man fed him was equivalent to a ticking time bomb. It could detonate in his body at any time and take his life away. The threat of death in the next second was too torturous. If he didn't have more important things to do, he would have collapsed a long time ago. He needed the antidote. He needed to get rid of the poison in his body and defuse the bomb. That way, he would have a slight sense of security. This was also the biggest motivation for him to persevere. He didn't want to die. After a moment of silence, the black-robed man asked, "Your wife and children, did they drink that bowl of soup?" Zhou Fan's body trembled violently as he looked at the black-robed man in horror. This was a rather sensitive and difficult question to answer. If he said that he drank it, then the black-robed man would be suspicious. What kind of person would kill his own wife and child? Could such a person be trusted? If he said that he didn't drink it, then the black-robed man would be even angrier. If you reminded your wife and child, would you also remind the rest of the Fong family? If his actions of reminding his wife and children alerted the Fong family, then wouldn't this mission fail? You drank it. Or did you not drink it? The black-robed man was very concerned about the answer to this question and asked. Yes, they drank it. Zhou Fan's teeth chattered as he cried, "I was afraid of alerting them, so I didn't remind them. They also drank that bowl of soup. Give me the antidote to the soup, I want to save them." Gagga, the black-robed man laughed. His laughter was even more ear-piercing and unpleasant than his voice. "People call us beasts. You are the beast." The black-robed man looked at Zhou Fan and said, "In order to save his life, he can even sacrifice his wife and son. If this isn't a slow-acting poison, the poisoned person will die immediately. Or, if I tell you that there is no antidote for this soulless attraction, would you feel a little guilty? Give me the antidote." Zhou Fan was like an enraged mad dog. Death had reduced his fear of the black-robed man. He reached out to the black-robed man and roared, "Give me the antidote. You promised me, as long as I help you complete the mission, you'll give me the antidote." "I did promise you," said the black-robed man. His wide sleeves didn't move at all, but a small red glass bottle flew out from there. Zhou Fan took the vial and asked, "Is this the antidote?" He was a little uncertain. Why did the black-robed man give him the antidote so readily? Or could it be that this was another type of poison that would kill anyone who drank it? "This is the antidote," said the black-robed man. "You can only choose to believe it. Because if you don't drink it, the poison in your body will also kill you." Zhou Fan no longer hesitated. He unscrewed the cap and poured the red potion into his mouth. A strong fishy smell wafted out, causing Zhou Fan to retch in disgust. "Don't vomit," said the black-robed man. "This is raw blood. If you vomit it, you won't be able to cure the poison in your body. The soulless attraction is a slow-acting poison, but the poison in your body will immediately break your meridians and cause you to bleed to death. Every hair on your body can bleed. You must have never seen such a scene, right? Zhou Fan forcefully swallowed the thing he was about to vomit back. He looked at the black-robed man and said, "Give me the antidote. I want to save my wife and child." "Do you think you still have a chance to save your wife and child?" asked the black-robed man in a deep voice. Zhou Fan staggered back and asked in panic, "What are you doing?" "Of course I'm going to kill you," said the black-robed man. "I promised to give you the antidote, so I'll give you the antidote. However, I didn't say that I wouldn't kill you after giving you the antidote." "Stupid animal, you're the only one who knows. How can I let you leave alive?" As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man's body disappeared. A gust of wind swept past. Zhou Fan thought he was going to die. His limbs were numb, and his whole body had been frozen into ice. Or was he already dead? This gray world was really like hell. But does hell also snow? When he felt that he could still breathe, when he heard his heart beating fiercely, he realized that he was still alive. He didn't understand what was going on. His mind was still stuck on the scene of the black-robed man rushing towards him. His speed was too fast, like a thick fog wrapping around him. What happened after that? "You're not dead," a familiar man's voice sounded behind him. Zhou Fan turned around and looked at Fang Yan's eyes. His body powerlessly fell to the ground and said, "You're finally here. It's better to come at the right time than to come early." Fang Yan's gaze was fixed on the black-robed man's face, and he said, "Don't you think so?" "You." The black-robed man looked at Fang Yan, then looked at Zhou Fan who was lying on the ground without the strength to move, and said with a voice full of resentment, "Did you plan to set up an ambush?" Zhou Fan came out to ask for the antidote, and when he was about to kill him, Fang Yan appeared in time to save Zhou Fan. If the appearance of these two people was just a coincidence, the black-robed man wouldn't believe it no matter what. "Don't act like you're angry," Fang Yan said with a sneer. "You sent someone to kill me, so I should be angry." "What right do you have to be angry? The reason why your assassination didn't succeed is because your plan was too stupid. Now, you can take off your black robe. I'm really curious, what kind of person hates me so much that they want to exterminate my Fang family?" The black-robed man's facial expression was hidden in his hood, and from where Fang Yan stood, he could only see a pitch-black hole. Not even the outline of the face could be seen, which made it very difficult for Fang Yan to distinguish. However, it was also because of this that he suspected that this person was someone he was familiar with. Otherwise, why would he dress up like a medieval wizard to hide his identity? The black-robed man sneered and said, "Since you're so curious, then come and take it off yourself." As the black-robed man spoke, he leaped up again. The wide black robe on his body spread out, and it was as if a black wall had appeared in front of Fang Yan out of thin air. Fang Yan was not afraid of the unknown darkness, and with a tap of his toes, he charged toward the black wall. Before he got close, a powerful qi was released. Fang Yan's body soared into the air like a crane, and his movements were as smooth as flowing water. He punched toward the black-robed man's chest. Paw! The powerful qi hit the black-robed man's chest, and the black-robed man quickly floated backward. Fang Yan's legs kicked off, and with the help of drunken crane rides the wind, his body accelerated in the air. His body shot out like a cannonball, fiercely charging toward the black-robed man. When Fang Yan got close to the black-robed man, he slammed his palm toward the black-robed man's head. The black-robed man's head shrank, and he unexpectedly disappeared from the hood. Without the support of his head, the hood collapsed in an instant. Fang Yan's palm struck empty air, and his body moved forward in a straight line due to inertia. Paw! The black-robed man's wide sleeve swung over, and he began to counterattack. The sleeve carried a powerful qi, and it was like a huge steel palm leaf fan. Before the sleeve could hit a person's body, the strong wind had already swept the person away. Fong Yan did not retreat, but instead advanced, and his body accelerated again. The Tai Chi heart spun, and the Tai Chi realm completely unfolded. In Fong Yan's mind, the swung sleeve turned into a square with 4 black lines. Of course, in Fong Yan's eyes, its speed was already astonishingly slow. Fong Yan stretched out his hand like lightning, and grabbed a corner of the sleeve. His legs exerted force, and his body rose into the air again. In the air, he used pushing 1,000 jin with 4 liang, and using his strength as a guide, he levered the huge black-robed man. His body spun in the air, following the path of the Tai Chi heart. With this rotating force as a carrier, Fong Yan's body was able to maintain its momentum in the air and no longer fall. Then, he pulled the black-robed man and spun like a windmill. Every time he spun, he would reduce some of the force. After they spun countless times, the black-robed man's strength had been completely reduced. Fong Yan dragged the black-robed man to the ground. He knew that the black-robed man had become a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. He wanted to tear apart his black robe, take off his black hat, and finally cover him with the white cloth that represented death. He hated the black-robed man to the core. Rip, a crisp sound was heard. The sleeve in Fong Yan's hand could not withstand the pull of gravity, and suddenly broke. Fong Yan reacted quickly, and punched the black-robed man's head. He was never a picky person. In his opinion, he could first see the black-robed man's true face, and then smash his head, or he could first smash his head, and then see the black-robed man's true face. Perhaps at that time, he would no longer be able to see clearly. Who cared? Bam! Fong Yan's fist landed solidly on the black robe. Unfortunately, it was only the black robe, and not the black-robed man's body. The black-robed man actually used the black robe as a disguise, and played a clever trick of a cicada shedding its carapace. He slid down from the bottom of the black robe. Earlier, Fong Yan landed on the ground, and then swung his right hand, and a blood-red thread shot towards Shou Fan, who was lying on the ground. Chapter 404. Hiss, the red thread snake hissed. It was as if someone was whistling his foot. He tried hard to make a sound, but it was not loud or pleasant at all. The red thread flew towards Shou Fan, who was lying on the ground, as fast as lightning. If it was an ordinary person, such as Shou Fan, even if the tiny red thread entered his body through his nostrils, ears, or mouth, and gave birth to a nest of red thread snakes in his stomach, he would not be aware of it. However, in Fong Yan's eyes, he could clearly see the red line's every move and even its 2 black eyes that were like dots. It was a red thread snake. Fong Yan was no stranger to this kind of red thread snake. Previously, when he fought with the Snake Lord had used such a disgusting thing that was impossible to guard against to poison him. However, the Snake Lord had been subdued by Fong Yan and had his snake eye. As long as Fong Yan crushed the snake eye, the Snake Lord would die on the spot. The Snake Lord's life was to become Fong Yan's snake slave and be used by him. It was impossible for him to have the guts to resist and poison Fong Yan. Of course, there was also the possibility that the Snake Lord wanted to poison Fong Yan's family to death and then take away his snake eye from Fong Yan. However, Fong Yan knew that this person was not the Snake Lord. At first contact, he knew that this person was not the Snake Lord. There were many senses in the human body. Fong Yan was quite confident in his combat sense. Shou Fan was lying on the snow silently. After a day and a night of suffering, his physical strength had been exhausted. He had just experienced a life and death crisis. Because of the appearance of Fong Yan, he could not hold on any longer. He directly lay on the ground and fainted. Shou Fan did not have the ability to save himself, and Fang Yan could not just watch his uncle get killed by the red thread snake. Although he had said not to let him down, he could not really abandon his uncle. It was a matter of life and death. His life was hanging by a thread. Fang Yan's Taiji heart spun even more crazily. The airflow formed a white whirlpool that could devour everything. Fang Yan felt a sharp pain in his dantian, as if the heat from the rotation was going to burn his skin and flesh. The Taiji domain was unleashed to the extreme, and the movement of the red snake turned into a tiny line. Even though he started later, he arrived first. Fang Yan's body flipped and jumped in the air, chasing after the red-lined snake that was about to enter Zhou Fan's body at a ghostly speed. Seeing that the red thread viper was about to land on the ground and attack, Fang Yan suddenly threw out the corner of his robe that he was holding. The lower hem of the robe contained an abundant amount of Taiji energy. It was like gold or iron, a murderous weapon. Hoo, wherever the hem of the robe passed, the air was ignited by its heat, emitting a crisp crackling sound. In front of it, there was a rectangular, airless vacuum. His sleeves whipped the red thread snake's body, sending it flying. Hiss, 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 the red-lined snake let out a few weak cries and fell to the ground. It had already become a dead snake. Fang Yan rushed over and stepped on it. Crack! The red-lined snake's body and the snow on the ground were stepped on by Fang Yan, merging into a pool of red and white mud. The red-lined snake was raised on corpse blood, so the blood inside had a strong stench. Zhou Fan was still sleeping soundly, unaware of the danger outside. Fang Yan saved his uncle and helped him out of danger. When he turned to look at the black-robed man, he had already disappeared. However, when Fang Yan tore off his black robe, he still managed to catch a glimpse of him in a hurry. What kind of face was that? A very ordinary person with a very ordinary face. His skin was as pale as paper, as if he had never seen the light of day. The most memorable thing was that he only had one eye. On the side of his cheek where he had lost his eye, there was a shocking hole in his flesh. The blood had already drained, the wound had already healed, but the uneven skin and the protruding sarcoma of the meridians were still nauseating. This was a caveman. And also a dead man. When Zhou Fan opened his eyes, his wife Fang Yijing was sitting next to him, looking at him with a worried expression. Zhou Fan's mouth moved, but no words came out. "You're awake." Fang Yijing grabbed her husband's hand and asked, "Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Zhou Fan blinked and asked, "I'm not dead." He remembered that he was already dead. The ice and snow covered him, and there was a crystal-clear snow bag where he laid. That was his coffin. "I'm not dead," Fang Yijing said with reddened eyes. "Fang Yan saved you," Yi Zichen said. "You didn't lie to me," Zhou Fan said. "What? Everyone in your family knows Kung Fu," Zhou Fan said. "I know Fang Yan knows Kung Fu. I saw him perform Kung Fu. It was amazing, like he was filming a movie. I didn't lie to you." "You didn't lie to me either." Fang Yijing grabbed her husband's hand and smiled. "You said you would get along well with my family, and you really did it." Zhou Fan's expression was full of guilt. "I've let you down." "If it wasn't for me, you didn't let anyone down." Fang Yijing put Zhou Fan's hand on her face and said with reddened eyes, "Zhou Fan, thank you. Thank you for choosing us, thank you for telling the truth to Fang Yan, thank you for not being so selfish." Fang Yan said that if it wasn't for you, our family could have been poisoned. "My dad also praised you, saying that you're indeed Fang Hui's son-in-law. My dad rarely praises people, especially these past few years. The only person he praised was Fang Yan." "Really?" Zhou Fan asked with tears streaming down his face. "Did they really say that?" Zhou Mingli felt so wronged, but also so touched. What did he go through in the past 2 days? He was just a normal little official. He just wanted to come to his wife's hometown to spend Chinese New Year with his father-in-law. How did he encounter something like this? First, he had a conflict with Fang Yan. He was ridiculed and bullied to the point of death. He just wanted to go out for a walk, but he met a black-cloaked man who fed him a poison, then gave him a bottle of potion and told him to poison his father-in-law's family. Did he die? Or did his father-in-law's family die? This wasn't a problem, this was King world-class problem. He hesitated for a long time. He didn't even report what happened to him to the Fang family immediately. For a period of time, he was really considering how to poison the soup pot. Of course, he failed. His strange behavior was already noticed by Fang Yan. He knew that he was a selfish person, and also knew that he was the sinner of the Fang family. He felt that neither his wife nor the Fang family would forgive him. Fortunately, it was all over now. He was still alive, and so was his father-in-law's family. Moreover, he, who had never been recognized by them, actually received their praise. Was this the sweet after the bitter? It's true. They're discussing something outside. You'll know when you go out. Fang Yijing also nodded with tears on her face. I'm not going out, Zhou Fan said. He reached out and hugged his wife, saying, I just want to be alone with you for a while. The Fang family's living room. The children were all taken to their rooms to sleep by their mother. Only Fang Hui, Fang Yixing, Fang Hao, Xiao Qingxin, and the junior Fang Yan were left in the living room. Lu Wan also went out after making tea for everyone. She knew that the men of the Fang family had something very important to discuss today. She didn't know until now that what she thought was a peaceful New Year's Eve dinner was actually hiding such a dangerous thing. Looking at her son, Fang Yan, who was sitting calmly next to his grandfather, Lu Wan's heart was filled with comfort. Her son had grown up and could share the family's worries. No, not only could he share the family's worries, he could already support the Fang family's image. It's just that this child is working too hard. If only there was someone who could share the burden with him. Lu Wan thought to herself that it was time to arrange a marriage for Fang Yan. Fang Yan still didn't know about his mother's evil thoughts. He said, this is a ruthless move, but also unexpected. They're trying to get rid of our entire family without making a sound. Fortunately, they chose the wrong chess piece. They chose Zhou Fan to carry out this plan. However, no matter how much Zhou Fan hated the Fang family and how much he hated Fang Yan, he didn't have the intention to eliminate the entire Fang family. They asked Uncle to poison the soup pot to kill us, his wife, and his child. As long as you're a man, you'll have a little bit of resistance, right? Uncle said that the mission was completed, so they killed Uncle's wife and child. After understanding Uncle's choice, they were extremely angry, feeling that Uncle had lied to them. Our opponent is not only a psychopath, but also a psychopath, right? Just like what Fang Yan said, when faced with the decision to poison his wife, child, and all of his wife's family, anyone would feel uneasy. Zhou Fan was a selfish and timid person. However, this didn't mean that he had completely lost his humanity. He was hostile to the Fang family and hated Fang Yan, but it was only because of the bad feeling in his heart and a few words that he said. If he wanted the Fang family to fight and kill, he wouldn't be able to do such a thing. After he got the antidote, he came back like a stray dog. His strange behavior was hidden from his wife, Fang Yijing, and many people in the Fang family, but it couldn't be hidden from Fang Yan. Under Fang Yan's pressure, he finally confessed to Fang Yan everything that had happened to him. Fang Yan was shocked after hearing it, but he signaled Zhou Fan to keep quiet and beat him at his own game. The medicine that Zhou Fan threw into the soup pot was not the soulless lure, but a tonic called Lingji that Fang Yan gave him. Putting it into the soup pot wouldn't be harmful to the human body, and it could even be beneficial. Chapter 405. War was a competition of strength and wisdom. But the most important thing was luck. If Fong Yan didn't notice Shou Fan's abnormality, if Shou Fan refused to admit that he encountered the black-robed man and only said that he felt uncomfortable or that he felt uncomfortable when he saw Fong Yan, would the story have a different ending? The real soul-losing attraction was fed into a rabbit's mouth by Fong Yan. The rabbit didn't die immediately after eating the soul-losing attraction, and it didn't look any different from before it ate the medicine. Fong Yan understood that the other party had put in a slow-acting poison. Seeing that the rabbit didn't eat, Shou Fan asked Fong Yan if it was a prank. Fong Yan didn't believe it was a prank. After so many life and death hunts, he knew that those people outside were far more vicious than he could imagine. There was nothing they couldn't do. For a sensitive place like Swallow Fort, they could only use a slow-acting poison if they wanted to make such a big move. If the Fong family died tragically on New Year's Eve, the impact of this event would be too great. It wasn't something that ordinary people could suppress. No one dared to suppress it. Fong Yan wasn't sure if the Fong family had other puppets, and he didn't know if someone was watching Shou Fan and the Fong family. If someone was watching, and Shou Fan didn't carry out the task, they might make another move. Therefore, he asked Shou Fan to put the poison in the soup pot according to the plan. At the dinner table, Shou Fan suddenly apologized to everyone and toasted them 3 times. This was Shou Fan's impromptu performance. At that time, Shou Fan was still suffering from the poison. He wasn't sure if he could survive the night, and he wasn't sure if he could get the antidote from the black-robed man, although Fong Yan promised him that he would help him get the antidote. However, the black-robed man was so powerful, and Fong Yan, he was just a young and clever kid. In the hearts of ordinary people, bad guys were always more ferocious and terrifying than good guys. Shou Fan apologized to everyone for his behavior for so many years. Fong Yan was worried that he would mess up the show. Fortunately, he had been controlling his emotions and forcefully took back the topic. Therefore, when Fong Yan clinked glasses with him at the dinner table, he said that he thought he could still be saved. Everything that happened after that was logical. Shou Fan's acting skills were off the charts. After everyone finished their soup, he used the excuse of going to the bathroom and ran into the wilderness. Originally, Fong Yan thought that the black-robed man would not give the antidote to Shou Fan so easily. The most likely scenario was that he would kill Shou Fan. He was going to die anyway, so why waste an antidote? It turned out that bad people also had a side of them that kept their promises. If I say I'll give you the antidote, I'll give you the antidote. If I say I'll kill you, I'll definitely kill you. Shou Fan got the antidote, and Fong Yan blocked the black-robed man's attack and saved Shou Fan. After listening to Fong Yan's story, the whole family fell into a long silence. This is luck, and also a blessing. Fong Hui sighed and said, "It proves that our Fong family should not fall, nor should we fail." Who is that black-robed man? Zhao Qingxin looked at Fong Yan and said, "Do you want me to use my connections in Yanjin to investigate?" "That's fine," Fong Yan said. "Whether it works or not, we have to show the outside world that we were bullied. It's better to do it sooner than later." "I'll arrange it now," Zhao Qingxin said. "I'll take some people to the mountain to check." "Second uncle, there's no need to check the mountain," Fong Yan said with a smile. "He's gone." Fong Hui nodded and said, "From what Fong Yan said, he's definitely gone. However, after daybreak, send a few good stalkers to take a look. Maybe they can find some clues." "Got it," Zhao Qingxin agreed and went to the yard to make a call. Obviously, he was going to use the Zhao family's power in Yanjin. "We have to find out who he is." Fong Hao's face was full of murderous intent. "We didn't poison him this time, but what about next time? What about the next time? It's really hard to eat and sleep with an enemy like him." Fong Hui nodded and said, "What Fong Hao said makes sense. Our Fong family doesn't bully others, but we can't let others bully us for no reason. If we get slapped, we'll take it. If we get slapped a second time, we should at least ask why, right? The old man looked at Fong Yen and said, Fong Yen, what do you think? Grandpa, let me handle this matter, Fong Yen said coldly. If we let him escape this time, he won't be so lucky next time. That's settled, Fong Hui said. Let Fong Yen handle this matter. It's getting late. Go and rest. Fong Yixing looked at Fong Yen and said, be careful. I will, Fong Yen said. Dad, you go and rest. We still have to get up early tomorrow morning to pay New Year's greetings. You have to come with us this year, Fong Hui said. We'll have to go to every household after coming back. Those who helped us before, go and kowtow to their elders. Those who bullied us before, practice with their juniors. Don't hide at home like a coward. Fong Yen smiled bitterly and said, isn't this bullying? What do you mean by bullying? This is showing off our strength, Fong Hui said coldly. The country also conducts military exercises from time to time. What's wrong with showing off our strength? New Year's Eve was also the golden time to say goodbye to the old and welcome the new. Before midnight, Fong Yan's phone began to ring. Most of them were from Rosefinch Secondary students and colleagues in the office. Zhu Jian and Li Mingqiang, who thought they were close to Fong Yan, called him personally. Zhu Jian's call was relatively simple. He only asked when Fong Yan would return to Huaqing and asked Fong Yan to go to his house for a meal and a drink. Fong Yan told them in advance that he would return to Yanjing for the Spring Festival. They didn't contact Fong Yan during the holiday. Fong Yan said he would return after the Spring Festival, so Zhu Jian said to go to his house for a drink on the 14th of the first lunar month. He was worried that Fong Yan would have an appointment on the 15th, and the 16th was the day school reopened. Of course, the third-year students would start school on the 9th of the first lunar month, and their studies would be more arduous. Li Mingqiang's call was much more intimate and polite. He also asked where Fong Yan's home was in Yanjing. He planned to go to Yanjing after the Spring Festival, mainly to bring his family and children on a trip. He also wanted to visit Fong Yan's parents and elders at the same time. He said that it was a courtesy that he should perform. Fong Yan declined again and again. Only then did Li Mingqiang give up on the idea of going to Yanjing to visit Fong Yan for the Spring Festival. One of the school's vice principals was not feeling well. He had said before the Spring Festival that he would be retiring early this year. There were many people eyeing that position, and Li Mingqiang was the most powerful competitor. There were 3 people who could decide that position. The school board member Lu Chaoge, the current principal Zhang Xiaofeng, and the shadow principal Fong Yan. Li Mingqiang knew that if he had Fong Yan, he would have the votes of the school board member and the shadow principal. Even if Zhang Xiaofeng objected, it would be useless. Unfortunately, Fong Yan had already communicated with Zhang Xiaofeng and made other arrangements for this position. Mr. Fong, Happy New Year. The person who secretly likes you. An unknown number sent such a message. Fong Yan thought of something and immediately dialed that number. The call went through, but it was an impatient boy's voice. Who are you? Who are you looking for? Fong Yan hesitated for a few seconds and took the initiative to hang up. Since the other party didn't want to expose himself, there was no need for him to probe aggressively. At such an age, who didn't have a crush that sounded exciting but was actually sad and pitiful? There was a joke on the internet. It said that you might not remember who sent you a message during the Spring Festival, but you would remember clearly who didn't send you a message. As time went by, it was getting closer to midnight. Fong Yan's phone was getting more and more busy. Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan stayed by Fong Yan's side. Seeing that Fong Yan was busy answering messages and answering phone calls, the two of them felt a little sad when they looked at the phone in their hands. They waited for a long time, but there was not a single message or phone call. On such a special night, they were like orphans forgotten by the world. Ding! The phone in Fong Yingying's hand finally rang. Fong Yingying was so excited that the fat on his face kept shaking. While Fong Yan was drinking water, he said very discontentedly, "I don't know who sent me a message to wish me well. I hate this kind of cheap blessing method the most. They are not even willing to write a blessing, and the blessing message is copied and forwarded. 8,000 people out of 10,000 received the same message. It's a waste of money." Fong Yingying opened his message in front of Fong Yan. There was only one message in the empty inbox, and the name of the message was so familiar, Fong Family Hero. Fong Yingying was stunned for half a second and wanted to quickly hide the phone. "Open it and see." Fong Yan held the teacup and said, "Let's see what Fong Haohan said to you." "There's no need for that, right?" Fong Yingying said with a bitter face. "It's possible that Fong Haohan wrote a love poem to some girl, but this idiot accidentally chose the wrong recipient and sent it to me." Love poem? Fong Yan's heart of gossip was burning, and it was even more ferocious than the spinning of the heart of Tai Chi. "Open it and see. Otherwise, I'll do it myself." Fong Haohan shook his head vigorously, signaling Fong Yingying not to open the message. "What are you shaking for? Do you think you're a roly-poly doll?" Fong Yingying said angrily. "The two of us are sitting together, and the straight line distance is less than 2 meters. What can't we say directly? You just have to waste a message fee." Fong Haohan still shook his head, and he shook even more violently. "Open it." Fong Yan's curiosity was aroused, and he said to Fong Yingying. Fong Yingying had no choice but to take out his phone and open the message sent by Fong Haohan. "Fong Yingying, Happy New Year. You also quickly send me a blessing message. Don't let Junior Marshall Uncle see it. Remember, remember." Chapter 406. O to the power of O. At first, Fong Yan's expression was like this. Smiley face. Then, Fong Yan's expression changed again. : In the end, Fong Yan's expression became like this. Fong Yan wanted to say something. He wanted to tease her or say some comforting words, but he couldn't say anything. He patted Fong Yingying's shoulder, then Fong Haohan's shoulder. A compassionate look that said, "I understand you and I'm with you." Fong Yingying's face was extremely embarrassed. He said to Fong Haohan with dissatisfaction, "I hope my life will turn into that lotus and I will abandon all fame and fortune. Let the world praise God's freedom, and we only need to monopolize the world." Haven't you heard of this song? Didn't you understand its essence? The people of the inner Jianghu are all peerless powerhouses who live in seclusion. We don't seek fame, nor are we greedy for benefits. What kind of spectacle do we not have? Seen it before. What great temptation have we not experienced? Why would we care about a mere congratulatory message? Fong Haohan, if you want a blessing, just say it. Junior Marshall Uncle and I will satisfy you. It's not a big deal, is it? Was there a need to specially send a message asking for it? You even said not to let Junior Marshall Uncle see it. What kind of thoughts are you having? I, Fong Yingying, do things in an open and above-board manner. There is nothing that I cannot say to others. Junior Marshall Uncle is our elder brother. Do we need to lie to him? I don't care what you, Fong Haohan, do. Anyway, I, Fong Yingying, would never do such a thing. As Fong Yingying was passionately criticizing Fong Haohan, the phone in his hand rang again. Ding dang, it was still the sound of a message from his phone. We are masters, and masters should have the demeanor of masters. As Fong Yingying spoke, he opened the message. After glancing at it, his eyes widened, and the fat on his face trembled. He jumped up from the sofa excitedly and shouted, "Miss Yi sent me a message. Miss Yi sent me a message." Ding dang. Fong Haohen's phone also rang with the sound of a text message. Fong Haohen opened his phone and jumped up as well. His body was thin, tall and long, and when he jumped, he looked like a dancing skeleton. "Miss Yi also sent me a message. Miss Yi has also sent me a message." Fong Yan looked at his phone. It was lying there quietly. It was as if it was dead, not moving at all. He didn't receive a message from Yi Ro. Yi Ro seemed to have forgotten him. Fong Yan looked at Fong Yingying and Fong Haohen unhappily and said, "What did Yi Ro, that savage woman, send you?" "Happy New Year," Fong Yingxiong said excitedly. His eyes were glued to the phone screen, as if he was afraid that the words would disappear. "Happy New Year." Only 4 simple words, which was indeed in line with Yi Ro's style. If she said a lot of nonsense, she wouldn't be Yi Ro. "What about you?" Fong Yan looked at Fong Haohen and asked. "Happy New Year, too," Fong Haohen said. "Miss Yi also wishes me a Happy New Year." Fong Yan sneered and said, "The same blessing must be copied and pasted." "Impossible." Fong Yingying and Fong Haohen denied at the same time. "Why is it impossible?" Fong Yingxiong and Fong Haohen looked at each other. The two of them put their phones together and studied it carefully. "Happy New Year." It was all the same words. Suddenly, Fong Haohen shouted as if he had discovered a new continent, "It's not a copy and paste. It must not be a copy and paste. Miss Yi wrote the blessing for me and Hero herself. Look, there is a sentence after my Happy New Year, and there is an exclamation mark after Hero's Happy New Year." Fong Yingying looked at Fong Yan and said, "By the way, Junior Marshal Uncle, Miss Yi must have sent you a message a long time ago, right? What did she say to you?" Fong Yan didn't bother to look at their complacent faces. He went to the yard and called some people. He received a lot of congratulatory messages, but some people had to be called by him personally. For example, his maternal grandparents, the principal of Rosefinch, Zhang Xiaofeng, and the principal of Ivy League High, Zhong Dei, and other elders needed Fong Yan to take the initiative to call them. Fong Yan called his grandpa and grandma first. His grandma greeted the whole family patiently and then gave the phone to his grandpa. His grandpa just asked him if he would come to watching next year and when he would come to watching. After getting Fong Yan's reply, he hung up the phone. Principal Zhang Xiaofeng was watching the Spring Festival Gala with his wife. He simply said a few words to Fong Yan, confirmed Fong Yan's return date after the New Year, and hung up. Zhong Dei was still drinking with his family. He was very surprised to receive Fong Yan's call. He laughed and invited Fong Yan for a drink after the New Year. After Fong Yan finished these calls, he was about to go back to his room when he saw fireworks exploding in the distant sky. The colorful fireworks lit up the night sky, making the sky above Swallow Dock glitter with red light. It looked more gorgeous and dazzling than usual. Then, more fireworks soared into the sky. The flowers bloomed, and the sky was lively like a fireworks show. Swallow Dock didn't have the custom of setting off fireworks. These fireworks were set off in Yanjing City or other villages around Yanjing City. Fong Yan stood in the yard and watched the fireworks for a while. Suddenly, he thought of a woman who was as gorgeous as fireworks but lonely. He dialed the number, and it took a while for the phone to be picked up. Fong Yan. The woman's crisp and cold voice came from the phone. "It's me," Fong Yan said with a smile. "What are you doing? Why did you take so long to pick up?" "I just took a shower," the woman said. "When I came out, I saw my phone was ringing, so I picked up late, taking a shower." Fong Yan imagined the image of Lu Chaoge taking off her clothes and taking a red wine bath. His handsome face suddenly turned red. These women, Fong Yan thought angrily. Every word they say carries some kind of obscure hint. If you're not careful, you'll fall into their trap. Have you had dinner? Fong Yan asked. Yes, I have. Lu Xiaoge's voice became gentler. After coming back from the company, I fried myself a steak and drank a bottle of red wine. I'm about to take a shower and read a book before going to bed. I don't have the habit of watching the Spring Festival Gala. either. Fong Yan said with a smile. Actually, there's nothing interesting about the Spring Festival Gala. Today is New Year's Eve. Why did you go to the company? The first sample is out. Lu Chaoge's voice became excited. We've tried it on some equipment, and the performance is very good. Now Chaoyan Research Institute is further optimizing and improving it. When the product is fully mature, after a 3-month run-in period, we can produce the product and send it to the market through various channels, and energy reform is about to be pulled by us. The curtain has begun. When we occupy the market, they will either cater to us or be eliminated by us. Hearing this good news, Fong Yan was also very happy and said, "You're moving very fast. I thought it would take at least 6 months to a year to see the product go online. I didn't expect you to shorten the times so much, but you still have to pay attention to the balance of work and rest. After working so hard for so long, take advantage of the Spring Festival to rest for a few days." "I don't want to rest," Lu Chaoge said. "Why?" "Because, if you rest, you don't know what to do." Fong Yan was silent. The other end of the phone stopped talking. "Yes, if you rest, you don't know what to do." It was the Spring Festival now, and today was New Year's Eve. Other families were all reunited, drinking wine, eating dumplings, watching TV and setting off fireworks, happy and harmonious. But what about Lu Chaoge? Her parents had left her a long time ago, and her sister-in-law had also passed away from her injuries some time ago. In this world, she no longer had any relatives. All she had were those enemies who were like wolves and tigers. Their blood-red eyes stared fiercely at Lu Chaoge, coveting this soft woman who held the treasure in her hand. As long as they were not careful, they would be devoured by them until not even their bones were left. Even now, during the second they were talking, there were probably many people hiding in the dark who wanted to take her life or take away the Rubik's Cube technology, right? The ancient said that one must brave the dragon's pool and the tiger's den. However, because of absolute wall, Lu Chaoge was in the dragon's pool and the tiger's den every second of every day, right? When he was not there, watching was too dangerous for that woman. "I'm inviting you now. Next year, you must come back with me for the Spring Festival," Fong Yan said seriously. "Okay. I promise you." Lu Chaoge laughed softly. Even on the other end of the phone, Fong Yan could hear her clear and melodious laughter. "Pa!" A firework bloomed beside his ear. Fong Yan looked up at the sky above him. The place where the firework was set off was very far away from him. "Someone is setting off fireworks in the neighborhood," Lu Chaoge said faintly. "What beautiful fireworks." Fong Yan finally understood that someone was setting off fireworks on Lu Chaoge's side. The sound of the fireworks exploding came through the phone, which was why Fong Yan felt it was so real and so loud. "Pa, pa, pa," fireworks rose into the sky one after another, exploding one after another. Fong Yan did not speak, and neither did Lu Chaoge. Under the same starry sky, the two of them enjoyed different fireworks. Two people snuggling up to each other and enjoying fireworks together was romantic, but one person enjoying fireworks alone was a waste. Like the moon, like the stars you're seductive blooming crying so loudly who is it setting your clothes on fire tasting the wind and rain you are so beautiful and sad after prosperity is desolation after desolation is forgetting why not to bury my body with it. The wine of tears drinking full of vicissitudes distant so far, missing so long, fireworks were lonely, she was even more lonely than fireworks. Chapter 407. Fireworks, Silver Flowers, and Sleepless Nights. The sound of fireworks and firecrackers didn't stop. Because it was close to midnight, they were getting more and more frequent in the starry sky where Fong Yen was in thousands of miles away. Lu Chaoga didn't speak again, and neither did Fong Yen. Lu Chaoga was focused on watching the fireworks, and Fong Yen was watching the fireworks with her on the other end of the phone. At this time, words had become a superfluous and inappropriate way of communication. She was really lonely during the festival alone, so he accompanied her on the phone. For him, he could only do this much. For her, this was enough. Time passed by, and the fireworks were set off one after another. They wanted to continue like this. Until the sky fell and the earth cracked, until the seas dried up and the rocks rotted, until the mountains became flat, until the sky and the earth merged, until the smartphone ran out of battery. Yes, just as Fong Yen thought that they were going to continue in this wonderful state for a long time, the phone placed by his ear began to heat up, and there was a beep 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 sound of battery alarm. According to Fong Yan's experience, he knew that the phone's battery was about to run out. The battery life of today's smartphones was too short. When their new energy technology, the Rubik's Cube, was popularized, this problem could be solved. A battery could be used for half a month, and the wife would have to worry about the problem of her husband not coming home. Is the phone out of battery? Lu Chaoga, who was on the other end of the phone, also heard the beep sound. She said with a smile, Fong Yen, thank you for watching the fireworks with me. I'm very calm now, and I don't feel very lonely. The fireworks tonight are really beautiful. Fong Yen nodded. After nodding, he remembered that Lu Chaoga couldn't see him at all, so he quickly said, the fireworks tonight are very beautiful. Then that's it, Lu Chaoga said. I think you must be very busy tonight. I'm not very busy, Fong Yen said. He didn't do much tonight. He just chased away a killer, saved a family's life, received a few messages, made a few phone calls, and was despised by Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan. Dang dang dang, the old bell in the east of the village was rung by the bellkeeper, which meant that the old year had passed and the new year had arrived. It meant that Swallow Fort had protected Huaxia for another year. It meant that Huaxia had been blessed with good weather and a bumper harvest. The country was prosperous and the people were at peace. Saying goodbye to the old year and welcoming the new year was indeed something worth ringing the bell to boast about. Happy New Year, Lu Chaoga said. Happy New Year, Fong Yen said. After thinking for a while, he added, I'll be returning to Flower City soon. Yes, the students are about to start school. See you in Flower City. See you in Flower City. Fong Yen hung up the call with Lu Chaoga. He was about to go back to his room to change the battery when the phone in his hand rang again. Fong Yen looked at the caller ID and answered the call again. He smiled and said, Jiang Qin, Happy New Year. Mr. Fong, Happy New Year. Jiang Qin's sweet voice came through the phone. Mr. Fong, who are you talking to? I've been calling for half an hour. Your phone has been busy, I didn't know you were a talkative person before. Fong Yen smiled and said, I've been calling my friends to wish me a Happy New Year. I wanted to be the first to wish you a Happy New Year, Jiang Qin said, feeling wronged. Am I the first person to wish you a Happy New Year? No, Fong Yen said honestly. The first person to wish him a Happy New Year was Lu Chaoga. Their phone call went from last year to the new year. Ah! Jiang Qin shouted with dissatisfaction, who was earlier than me? Who took my first place? Fang Yan smiled and said, what's the big deal about being first and second? It's fine as long as you get it. Are your parents there? Give them the phone. I'll wish them a happy new year. After Fang Yan changed the battery on his phone, Yuan Lin happened to call. Fang Yan also wished her parents a happy new year. Fang Yan was going to take some time to give Xia Tian a call, but he didn't expect Xia Tian to call him. Mr. Fang, are you busy today? Xia Tian's voice was very lazy, as if she had just woken up and was lying in bed. No matter how busy a teacher is, he's not as busy as a celebrity, Fang Yan said with a smile. Why do I feel like you're sleeping? Yes. After dinner, I felt sleepy, so I lay in bed and slept. I was just woken up by the sound of firecrackers outside and thought that the new year had arrived. I turned on my phone and gave you a call for a happy new year. It's only midnight and you've been asleep. Fang Yan's face was full of surprise. Tonight, how do you have time to sleep? According to Fang Yan's understanding of the life of a celebrity, wasn't the new year the busiest time for them? Gala, running, cocktail parties, all kinds of etiquette. Even if they didn't attend the Spring Festival Gala of Huaxia TV station, they would attend the New Year's Eve Gala of the local TV station. Even if they didn't attend TV programs, they had to attend some New Year's parties. With Xia Tian's popularity, how could she have time to lie at home and sleep in? I don't want to attend any gala this year. I rejected all the activities. Xia Tian giggled, sounding very happy. I just want to have a meal with my family, and then lie in bed and have a good sleep. I've been busy outside for a whole year, and it's really tiring. After dinner, I turned off my phone. No one can find me, and I can't see or hear any messages or phone calls. This trick really works, and now I'm in a much better mood. It seems that all the hard work of the year has been compensated in this sleep. Rich people are so willful. Fang Yan said with a smile. If I knew earlier, I would also turn off my phone and sleep like you. You can't turn off your phone. If you turn off your phone, I won't be able to call you. Xia Tian said. I haven't had time to ask, what is your relationship with that little girl? Little girl? What little girl? The little girl I saw. Xia Tian said with a smile. It's rare to see a little girl like that. There's only one in our Yanjing city for hundreds of years. The little princess of the Qin family, TSK, Mr. Fang, I found out that your way is very wild. It's not easy for us to meet, but we're standing at the entrance of the club to wait for you. She's my student. Fang Yan said. That's all. That's all. Fang Yan said. Lanshan Valley also called to pay their New Year's greetings, and the willow tree sent a greeting message. Fang Yan was much busier this spring festival than in previous years. Unknowingly, there were so many people around him. Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan prepared firecrackers in advance and set them off on bamboo poles, which was called Welcome the New Year. After welcoming the new year, Fang Yan personally went to the kitchen to cut 2 plates of braised meat and walked to the backyard with them. He knew that the old drunkard must not be asleep at this time. The old drunkard was indeed not asleep. He was making wine in the yard. The old drunkard liked to drink and also liked to make wine. Every year on the first day of the new year, he would brew a jar of wine, which was called new wine. The new year would have a new beginning. Perhaps this also represented some of the persistence and hope in his heart. Fang Yan and the old drunkard sat opposite each other and drank. Each of them had a big bowl, and they drank a bowl of wine in one gulp. Fang Yan ate and drank at the same time, while the old drunkard only drank and didn't eat. It was as if drinking could fill him up, and things like meat and vegetables were unnecessary to him. "Who is it?" the old drunkard asked. The old drunkard drank all day, but it didn't mean that he knew nothing about the family. On the contrary, because of his presence, because of him, the Fong family had always been peaceful. Tonight, when Fong Yen went out to catch the murderer, the person who protected the Fong family was this old drunkard who didn't even want to eat with others during the New Year's Eve dinner. "I only have some clues, but I can't be sure yet," Fong Yen said in a deep voice. However, this time, they want to wipe out the Fong family. There are only a few opponents who can be so generous. A fox will always show its tail, and a fly will always be unable to resist eating *T again. Since they are doing this, they can't blame us for not stopping until one of us is dead. "Just kill them," the old drunkard burped and said calmly. Fong Yen smiled and said, "In the past, you were the one who supported the family, but now, I will. Don't worry, we won't fall. Just drink your wine and leave everything else to me. I will drink the wine that I should drink, and I will kill the people that I should kill," the old drunkard said with a clear voice, like a knife burning in a bowl. "I'm only a cripple, not a dead person. Even a stray dog or cat dares to bully us. Do they think the Fong family is nobody? You're not a cripple, it's just that your meridians," the old drunkard cut off Fong Yen and said. There was a climber who was good at climbing the mountain, but when he was about to reach the top, he was kicked down. No matter how hard that person tried, they would only be able to climb to the middle of the mountain. Can you still say that person is good at climbing? Fong Yan's eyes were filled with fighting spirit, saying, "So, I made a decision." The old drunkard looked at Fong Yen with a burning gaze, waiting for him to continue. "I want to challenge Dragon God Hua Xia," Fong Yen said very seriously. "He broke 2 of your meridians, I cut off 2 of his dragon claws." "That's fair." Clang, the old drunkard's finger tapped the side of the bowl, letting out a clear metallic sound. "I've been waiting for these words for too many years," the old drunkard said with an excited voice. "A man's ambition is to leave the village, and not return until he becomes famous. There's no need for the red earth to bury one's bones, there are mountains of gold at the end of the world. Martial artists of our generation should have such lofty ambitions. I want to avenge you. Our Fong family isn't that easy to bully. When do you want to challenge the Dragon God?" "When my heart of Taiji enters the water overflow realm, I will definitely fight against the Dragon God inside the Red Wall," Fong Yen said. "I believe that day will come very soon." Chapter 408. It was the first day of the new year. According to the customs of the North, every year on the first day of the new year, one had to go to the houses of the villagers to celebrate the new year. They first went to the most senior in the village, then to the oldest, then to their relatives, friends, neighbors, and companions. In the past, it was always Fong Yixing who represented the Fong family to visit each house. Some people would comfort him, some would tease him, and some would even drag him to spar with him. Everyone knew that Fong Yixing didn't like martial arts and abandoned martial arts to pursue literature. Wasn't it insulting to ask Fong Yixing to spar with him? Fong Yixing could only refuse again and again, and then let others laugh at him for a while. The Fong family's reputation gradually declined. This year, Fong Hui asked Fong Yen to accompany Fong Yixing to celebrate the new year. Since the old man had spoken, Fong Yen couldn't disobey. He could only wake up early and put on the green robe and 1,000-soled cloth boots that his mother had prepared for him in advance. The boots were made in an antique style to prevent the deep snow from pouring into the shoes and soaking his socks. Fong Yixing still wore simple round cloth shoes. As the head of the family, he had to have the air of a refined elder. He had to endure the cold. This was what it meant to be graceful and not warm. The most respected person in Swallow Dock was the teacher. Everyone in Swallow Dock had to go and pay their New Year's greetings to him. The Yi family was known as the #1 family in Swallow Dock, so they had to send a representative to celebrate the new year with the teacher. Fang Yan held the gift box and followed behind Fang Yixing. The father and son treaded through the snow toward the teacher's small house. When the father and son walked over, there were already many people ahead of them. The teacher finally took off his grayish-brown leather coat and changed into a silver-white tang suit. He sat upright on the mahogany chair in the living room, receiving the kowtows of the young people and children. There were also some middle-aged people who knelt down and kowtowed, but most of them bowed at the waist. After the children finished kowtowing, they presented the gift box in their hands. Bai Xiao, who was standing next to the teacher, took the gift box. The teacher reached out to touch the child's head and said, "You can go to the family school for enlightenment." And so, the child kowtowed again. The child's parents also expressed their gratitude happily. Some of the children who were already studying in the family school would also send gifts. The teacher patted the student's head and said, "You're clever enough, but you lack patience. He should use your family's learning stone to train his qi and temper his mind." The students lowered their heads to receive the lesson, and the parents also had to express their gratitude. All the uninitiated children in Swallow Dock had to be approved by the teachers to enter the school, and the students who were already studying would receive the teacher's comments, pointing out their strengths and weaknesses, and pointing out solutions to problems. Fang Yan and Fang Yixing stood outside the house. The weather was freezing, but the father and son did not feel cold at all. Fang Yan looked at the growing queue and said with a smile, "Sir, isn't this a monopoly in the industry? Our Swallow Dock only has one family school, and all children of the right age have to go to school with his permission. This job of his is a guaranteed income." Fang Yixing glanced at Fang Yan sternly and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Mr. is wholeheartedly devoted to the public. What is a gift worth? In my opinion, we should come and thank you on every festival." Fang Yan was helpless. His father was too old-fashioned. He was just joking when he was bored. Not only his father, but many people in Swallow Dock had developed this habit of being old-fashioned. This was also the reason why Mr. always emphasized that every family should send out some talented children. This was also the reason why Lu Daoling wanted to bring out some outstanding young people. Only with a big vision could one have a big heart and big vision. It was not a good thing for Swallow Dock to close its doors, and many things outside were also the best. Take the best and discard the dregs. This was the situation that Swallow Dock needed to change the most. Fang Yan understood, so he went out. Fang Yixing might also understand, but character could not be developed overnight. Instead, he was led forward by the old rules of the village, and was not willing to make new changes. Finally, it was the father and son's turn. Fang Yixing and Fang Yan both knelt down and kowtowed to Mr. seriously. After Fang Yixing said some auspicious words on behalf of the Fang family, Fang Yan handed over the gift box in his hand. Mr. looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, "You are too slippery. Usually, I can't get you to kowtow." Fang Yan felt wronged and said, "Mister, you have wronged me. When do I not come to kowtow to you during Chinese New Year? I kowtowed just now. If you think it is too little, I can kowtow a few more for you." Mr. was very happy to see Fang Yan and said, "You don't have to kowtow. You have 3 hearts and more than 10 guts. I have nothing to say to you, and I have nothing to teach you. Just remember our agreement." Fang Yan nodded seriously and said, "Mister, I remember." Mr. looked at Fang Yixing and said, "Yixing has a good son." Fang Yixing's face was flushed and he thanked him repeatedly. From the beginning to the end, Mr. never mentioned the sword that he lost. If Mr. didn't mention it, Fang Yan wouldn't take the initiative to mention it. Both of them pretended that it had never happened. Bai Xiu looked at Fang Yan and everyone else with a gentle smile. After Fang Yan got up from the ground, he said to Bai Xiu, "If you are tired of standing, let me stand for you for a while." Bai Xiu refused indifferently and said, "If there is anything, I will do it. As your disciple, I naturally have to do my best." Fang Yan was helpless. Bai Xiu's words were equivalent to poking Fang Yan's sore spot. Bai Xiu was Mr.'s disciple, but Fang Yan wasn't. Bai Xiu could be a teacher in the family school, but Fang Yan didn't have the chance to be a teacher there. Mr. taught Bai Xiu everything he had learned in his life, and Bai Xiu was Mr.'s successor. His words were above board, and others really couldn't compete with him for this position. After leaving Mr.'s place, Fang Yixing took Fang Yan and rushed to the Yi family. The Yi family's ancestor was currently the oldest person in Swallow Dock, and the Yi family was also relatively close to the Fang family. With Fang Hui's secret instructions, Fang Yixing naturally wouldn't go against his father's wishes. When the Fang family's father and son arrived, Yi Fengxing, who looked like a giant Fua doll, was about to leave. He saw Fang Yan and said happily, "Why are you up so early?" "I was going to kowtow to your grandpa Fang after I'm done kowtowing to Mr. I was also forcefully pulled up," Fang Yan said with a smile. "I've already been to Mr., so I'm here to kowtow to the ancestor now." Actually, he said he was here to kowtow to the Yi family's ancestor, but the Yi family's ancestor wasn't very willing to see guests all these years. Therefore, he was just going through the motions at the Yi family. "We just missed it," Yi Fengxing said regretfully. "Where's third uncle?" Third uncle rushed back to Yanjing after New Year's Eve dinner last night. "Today, he's going overseas with the minister," Yi Fengxing said. Yi Daowen walked out the door and saw the Fang family's father and son. He said, "Yixing, Happy New Year." "Fang Yan, Happy New Year." "Big brother Yi, Happy New Year." Fang Yixing and Yi Daowen cupped their fists and bowed. "Uncle, I'm here to wish you a Happy New Year." Fang Yan said with a smile. "I wish you happiness as vast as the East Sea and longevity as long as the South Mountain." Yi Daowen waved his hand and said, "These words are for the ancestor to hear. The ancestor just said that you and your son should go directly to the warm pavilion. I won't entertain you guys, I still have to go congratulate Mr. Fang Yixing was overjoyed and said, "Big brother Yi, go do what you need to do. We'll go to the warm pavilion and kowtow to the ancestor." Thus, the two groups of people parted at the entrance of the courtyard. Fang Yixing was incomparably emotional, and said to Fang Yan in a low voice, "This time, I've benefited from you. In the past, when I came to kowtow to the ancestor during the spring festival, I've never entered the warm pavilion. Maybe the ancestor's mood is especially good this year." Fang Yan said with a smile. Fang Yixing looked at his son with a smile and didn't say anything. He thought to himself, perhaps what his father said was really feasible. It was the attitude of the Yi brothers. "I'm afraid this is not going to be easy to pass." The father and son of the Fang family entered the warm pavilion. The Yi family's ancestor, Yi Wenro, and the servant girl Shi sat on the warm kong and played cards. Fang Yixing was the first to kneel down and kowtow 3 times to the ancestor. He also said a lot of blessings. The father had already knelt down, how could the son stand? Fang Yan also quickly followed behind Fang Yixing and knelt down. When the father and son of the Fang family knelt down, Yi Wenro and the servant girl Shi moved to the side. The father and son of the Fang family were kneeling to the ancestor, and the two of them could not accept it. All right, all of you, get up." The ancestor squinted his eyes and smiled. "All day long, I've heard you guys talk about living longer than Mount Nanshan. Who can live longer than a mountain? Wouldn't that be a living fossil? Ancestor, some minds were emptied in 2 or 3 years." Fang Yan said. You've lived much longer than those mountains. The ancestor couldn't help but laugh. He pointed at Fang Yen and said, ever since he was young, this naughty monkey only knows how to make me happy. It's my fault for not disciplining him well. Ancestor, don't lower yourself to the level of these children. Fang Yixing smiled and apologized. He could also see that the ancestor wasn't really angry with Fang Yen. How can you control whether a child becomes a talent or not? That's taught. The ancestor said. Fang Yen is very good. Whether it's in our swallow fort or outside, he's a first-class talent. Last night when we were having dinner, third bro praised him a lot. The third brother that the ancestor mentioned was the third tiger of the Yi family's 3 tigers, Yi Daoling. Yi Daoling praised Fang Yen at dinner. First, he was indeed grateful for Fang Yan's help. Second, he wanted to encourage the Yi family's children to work hard and improve. No wonder when Fang Yen came in, he saw that the Yi family's people looked at him strangely. It was as if he stole their chicken to set up an ambush. But, have you considered Fang Yan's feelings? From Fang Yan's point of view, Yi Daoling, this old fox, was drawing hatred for him. Chapter 409. Some compliments would make you feel sweet in your heart but disgusted in your mouth. For example, when someone compliments your child. Fang Yixing could hear the old ancestor's love for Fang Yen, but he couldn't follow the old ancestor's words and compliment his own son. If he did that, people would think that he didn't know what was good for him. That's Dao Ling's love for Fang Yen. He's causing trouble outside and it's all thanks to Dao Ling's help. Fang Yixing said modestly. I wanted to find time to invite Dao Ling to our house for a drink, but I didn't expect him to be in such a hurry to go to Yanjing City. Dao Ling's promotion has to be celebrated. The old ancestor waved her hand and said, Stop, stop. I don't want to hear about these things. What's the use of telling an old lady like me about the matters of you youngsters? I know you're all busy today and have many families to visit. Yixing, go do your work. Fang Yen, stay here and play with me. She is clumsy and can't even compare to an old lady like me. Fang Yixing quickly got up from the ground and said, Okay. I'll go to the other families. There really are many families to visit today and I have to visit every single one of them. Otherwise, it'll be rude. He then turned around and reminded Fang Yen, play cards with the old ancestor and don't make her angry. Dad, I know. Fang Yen said. Yi Wenru had been kneeling in the corner of the kong. She was wearing a red button-down blouse with gold-trimmed flowers and a soft black cotton dress. Her long hair was tied up, and her face was ruddy. She looked like a pretty wife. Fang Yen heard from Yi Fengxing that Yi Ro's mother loved needlework. Every spring festival, she would personally sew clothes for her children. She also took care of all the New Year clothes for the Yi family's elders and children. The Fuwa suit that Yi Fengxing was wearing should have been made by Yi Wenruo's mother. The style of the suit was not bad, but there was too much fat on Yi Fengxing's body, making the suit look a little out of place. Yi Ro's classical style suit was probably made by her mother. The stitches were dense and the patterns were bright. The red and gold complemented each other. Red makes gold dazzling, and gold makes red noble. Yi Ro looked quite lovely and cheerful in this set of clothes, which concealed much of her cold and aloof character. She was scolded by the old ancestor for being clumsy. She purposely pouted and said, I am stupid. Otherwise, why can I only be a maid for the old ancestor? If I was smart, I would have followed Miss to learn martial arts. The great ancestor reached out to pull Shear's mouth and said, You little girl, you're still not happy with my words, see if I don't tear your mouth off. She giggled and dodged. She said to Fang Yen, Why don't you take off your shoes and come up? Do you want me to take off your shoes for you? I only serve old ancestor and little miss. No need, no need. Fong Yan knew that she had a sharp tongue and was deeply loved by the old ancestor. She had a high status in the Yi family. It was impossible to ask her to take off his shoes. Besides, Fong Yan didn't have the habit of asking others to help him take off his shoes. Unless someone held a knife to his neck and forced him to take off his shoes. I'll do it myself. Fong Yan took off his cloth boots and climbed onto the warm Kong barefoot. He sat where she had been sitting and said, "Shall we start now? How do we play?" According to the game. The winner takes all, and the losers each lose 100. The great ancestor said. You didn't bring money, did you? Yes, Fong Yan said with a smile. Old ancestor, are you worried that I can't pay the bill? I'm afraid that you'll run away after you lose, the great ancestor said. Other children don't dare. You dare. Fong Yan smiled shyly and said, Old ancestor, you have a misunderstanding about me. I never owe anything. There was a small square table on the Kong. The great ancestor sat on the inner side, while Fong Yan and Yi Ro sat on the left and right, facing the door. Fong Yan quickly shuffled the cards, and then the game began. It was unknown whether Fong Yan was lucky or scheming, but he won several times in a row. The great ancestor and Yi Ro kept giving him money, and the small drawer in front of him was soon filled with 100 yuan bills. Fong Yan was full of excitement. He changed to a more comfortable position and said, It seems that I'm going to make a fortune today. Paw! He was kicked in the shin under the table. Only then did Fong Yan realize that he had stretched his leg in front of Yi Ro. He asked, Why did you kick me? My feet smell, Yi Ro said expressionlessly. The great ancestor smiled and said, It's a little smelly. I can smell it. Fong Yan awkwardly took his foot back and put it under his butt again. He wished he could change to a lying position. In that case, his feet would be able to hide far away. Fong Yan won again. Yi Ro and the great ancestor paid again. Paw! Fong Yan's knee was kicked again. This time, Fong Yan's leg didn't stretch out randomly. It was Yi Ro who stretched her foot under the table and kicked him. Fong Yan felt very wronged. He looked at Yi Ro and said, Why did you kick me again? Feet smell, Yi Ro said. The great ancestor glanced at Yi Ro and said, You child, even if Fong Yan's feet smell a little, you can't let people cut off his feet and put them in front of the door of the warm room, and then put them on when he goes out, can you? Fong Yan laughed and said, The great ancestor is quite humorous. They played another round, and the great ancestor won. Fong Yan paid quickly. This time, Yi Ro didn't kick Fong Yan under the table. Fong Yan sighed in his heart. People under other people's eaves had to lose money. Creak, a black Mercedes-Benz parked in the flat dojo of Swallow Dock, followed by another Mercedes-Benz. The third was still a Mercedes-Benz, the fourth was an extended Rolls-Royce, and the fifth and sixth were still Mercedes-Benz. The 6 black luxury cars formed a black mighty long dragon, and the Rolls-Royce surrounded by the 5 Mercedes-Benz was naturally the heart of this long dragon. Except for the Rolls-Royce that didn't move, the doors of the other 5 Mercedes-Benz opened with bangs. Then the tall men in black scattered in all directions, looking around with vigilance. Another 2 men in black stood on the left and right of the Rolls-Royce's door and took the initiative to help open the back door. She wore a white down jacket and a pair of sky blue jeans. The furry snow boots added a bit of playfulness to her appearance. She wore a checkered scarf around her neck, looking like a girl next door who was studying in a foreign place or a girl next door who worked in a big city and went home to visit her relatives during the spring festival. The girl's small boots stepped on the black soil of the dojo, asking with a sweet voice, How am I dressed? A tall and handsome young man in a well-tailored suit stood behind the girl, sizing up the Swallow's Dock village that was surrounded by heavy snow and said, "Very good. It meets your requirements, to make people feel close, but not oppressive." The girl giggled and said, "When there's a sense of oppression, there'll be a sense of distance." "That's not good, miss. Is this really worth it?" the man couldn't help but ask. "You have everything. Wisdom, beauty, kindness, wealth, as well as the power that ordinary people yearn for in their entire lives. You have this world, and you also have the right to rule over it. You should be standing proudly in the sky, coldly looking down on the living beings of this world. You've mixed yourself with the grass and trees, staining the bottom of your crystal shoes with mud. Don't you think that's a bit too much?" "He saved me," Chinitian replied. "Many people have saved you," the young man replied. He pointed at the black-clothed people around him, then at himself, saying, "They, including me, we've always been prepared to sacrifice ourselves to protect you." Chinitian went silent for a bit, then asked, "Muing, do you know Zhang Ailing?" "I do," Muing replied. "She wrote this on the back of Hu Lanqing's photo. In front of you, I've become very, very low to the point of being a speck of dust. But my heart likes it, a flower blooming from the dust." Chinitian's voice was light. "I really like this sentence. I feel that it's a true reflection of me. I know that I have a lot, but I'm willing to share what I have with him, or let him enjoy it alone. I'm willing. That's enough, isn't it?" Muing lightly sighed and said, "Although I feel that what you said is very reasonable, for some reason, I still find it hard to accept, because you're a man," Chinitian replied. "And because you don't understand how desperate a woman's sacrifice can be, for example, taking a bullet for him." Chinitian nodded and said, "For example, taking a bullet for him, he must have saved the galaxy in his previous life." "No, that's something Superman would do," Chinitian replied. She glanced at the bodyguards in black who were scattered around vigilantly and said in a crisp voice, "I didn't bring you here to protect me, and no one will hurt me in Swallow Dock. Take out all the gifts I brought. We're going to pay our teacher a New Year's greetings." As a result, the group of black-clothed bodyguards, who were domineering and had murderous looks in their eyes, became pitiful laborers. They used their hands to carry, shoulders to hug, and carried a large number of expensive gifts towards the village of Swallow Dock. Even the pretty boy Muing didn't run away, carrying a birdcage in one hand as he followed behind Chinitian. This New Year greeting army was too strange and eye-catching, attracting the attention of many people in Swallow Dock. A few people pointed at them, discussing something in low voices. Chinitian clasped his hands at an old woman at the entrance of the alley and said, "Sister, Happy New Year. Where's Teacher Fong Yan's house?" This sister made the old woman very happy. She pointed at the fish pond in front of them and said, "Go straight, you'll see that fish pond at the end. The one whose courtyard is directly facing the fish pond is the Fong family." "Thank you, sister," Chinitian said gratefully. Chapter 410. The arrival of Chinitian not only shocked the whole Swallow Dock, but also shocked all the people in the Fong family. Lu Wan was receiving guests in the living room. She heard from Fong Yingying that Fong Yan's student came to visit, so she came out to greet them politely. As soon as she walked out of the house, she saw a beautiful girl greeting her with a smile. She said, "Auntie, Happy New Year. I'm Chinitian, Mr. Fong Yan's student. I'm here to wish you a Happy New Year." Lu Wan suddenly felt dizzy. This girl was how should she describe her? She was too beautiful, too clean, too cute, too smart, and too decent. Lu Wan was also a girl from a scholarly family. She was very picky about women. Both appearance and temperament were indispensable. She was beautiful on the outside and beautiful on the inside. However, even with her picky eyes, she still felt that this girl had no flaws. If there was anything that worried him, it would be that this girl was too pretty, too clean, too cute, too smart, too generous, and a little too decent. How could his ugly son be worthy of such a girl? If they got married in the future, would her son be able to subdue the girl? What if her son was bullied by this girl? Oh, this is Fong Yan's student, Lu Wan thought of her self-introduction and then reacted. She felt a little happy, but more melancholy. How could she be a student? Lu Wan greeted her with a smile and said, "You are Etienne, right? This name is so impressive. It's cold outside. Come in and warm yourself. Where does Etienne come from? Is it hard to walk on the road?" She originally wanted to hold Qin Etienne's hand to appear more intimate. But she didn't know why this girl, who looked simple, always gave people a sense of oppression that kept people thousands of miles away. Her words and actions, her frown, and her smile were so comfortable and natural, but this kind of comfort made people feel that she was unattainable. Lu Wan was also a woman who had seen the world, but she didn't understand why she had such a strange feeling for this young girl. "Auntie, I came from Yanjing. It's not far," Qin Etienne said with a smile. "It's very convenient. How thoughtful of you. It's really an honor for Fong Yan to have a student like you." Lu Wan couldn't help belittling her son. "Come in and take a seat." He then commanded Fong Yingying and said, "Hero, quickly call Fong Yan. Tell him to come back quickly." "All right. I'll call Junior Marshal Uncle now." Fong Yingying nodded. Qin Etienne glanced at Eagle Moo beside him and said, "Let them bring the gifts in." Eagle Moo made a gesture, and a row of black-clothed men carrying large and small boxes walked towards the Fong family's courtyard. Not until then did Lu Wan know that there were so many people outside the yard. She looked at the scene with her eyes wide open and mouth agape, saying, "Young lady, this is not appropriate, right? We can't accept so many gifts from you." Lu Wan began to worry. What kind of person was this girl? Why did he bring so many helpers with him? Was she the daughter of a gangster? If she was a gangster, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, there was no trace of violence or hostility in her temperament and demeanor. It was obvious that she came from a rich family. Such a girl, Fong Yan, that silly boy, would be even less likely to marry her. Lu Wan sighed softly. It seemed that she had thought too much. Whenever he saw a beautiful girl, he couldn't help wanting her to be his daughter-in-law. How could it be so easy? Qin Etienne took Lu Wan's hand and said, "Auntie, you don't have to be so polite. Fong Yan is my teacher and he has helped me a lot. I came to pay a New Year's visit to Mr. Fong, so of course I should bring him a gift. How can I not bring gifts for your uncle and auntie if I bring gifts for your teacher? If others know, won't they say that I don't know etiquette? It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate." Lu Wan looked at the group of men in black walking past her and said anxiously. Even if Fong Yan really helped this girl in her studies, she couldn't accept such an expensive gift. Fong Yingying hung up Fong Yan's phone and eagerly took the birdcage from Mu Ying's hand. Mu Ying looked at him with a smile, but didn't give him the gift. Fong Yingying didn't force him. He went to the back and took a big wooden box from the hands of a man in black. Hearing the noise in the yard, Fong Yisin and his husband Fong Hao, Fong Yiling and her husband Zhao Qingxin, Fong Yijing and her husband Zhou Fan, Zhou Mingli, and a few children all ran out to see what was going on. Zhao Qingxin's Zhao family had a small business in Yanjing City. Seeing the row of men in black, he couldn't help but be surprised. He glanced at the men in black, but couldn't see which family they came from. Then he laughed at himself, thinking that no matter which family they came from, they must be the family that he had never been in contact with. Fong Hao looked at his wife in confusion. Fong Yisin shook his head, indicating that he also didn't know what was going on. Because of what happened last night, Zhou Fan didn't go out for the whole morning. He even hid in the room and ate a bowl of dumplings for breakfast. Fang Yixin knew that her husband hadn't recovered from the nightmare, so she accompanied him in the room for the whole morning. Hearing the voices outside, she dragged her husband out to see what was going on. When Zhou Fan saw Qin Yitian walking over hand in hand with Lu Wan, his first reaction was that she was beautiful. This girl was as beautiful as a fairy. His second reaction was the grandeur. Whose family's young lady was this? She brought along so many bodyguards and prepared such heavy gifts on a single trip. Zhou Fan calculated in his mind by elimination. No one in the group he knew dared to compete with this girl in terms of grandeur. If Zhou Fan knew that Qin Yitian didn't want to be too high profile and had reduced the number of his guards by more than half, what would he think? After the incident in Huaqing, the Qin family attached great importance to Qin Yitian's safety. The old master of the Qin family even wanted to assign his guards to his favorite granddaughter, but the Qin family refused. Qin Yitian's legendary mother had sent Eagle Mu to her daughter's side so that he could protect her. This was also the reason why Qin Yitian had Mu Ying by his side after he came back from Huaqing. Mu Ying was now the captain of Qin Yitian's guards, who led the whole security team and was responsible for Qin Yitian's safety. Who is he? Zhou Fan asked in a low voice. I don't know. Fang Yixin shook his head. I haven't seen him before. I think he is Fang Yan's student. Can you tell who this student is? Zhou Fan smiled bitterly and said, How can I tell? Go and ask around. Zhou Fan's heart was filled with emotion. When he first arrived, he didn't give a damn about the Fang family. He felt that his father-in-law's family in the suburbs of Yanjing had made him suffer a lot and humiliated him. He also looked down on Fang Yan. He felt that his nephew, who was a teacher in Huaqing, was too shabby. He even bragged that he would get him a new job. Now, looking at the things he had done and the people he had come into contact with, he had long left his uncle far behind. Take this student as an example. With the extravagance she displayed today, as long as she casually moved her lips, she would definitely be able to find a better job for Fang Yan. Moreover, such a beautiful student came to visit her teacher with such an expensive gift. Was there a deeper meaning behind it? Zhou Fan felt that he was really an idiot. He was the biggest idiot in the world. Zhou Mingli was shocked when he saw Qin Yitian. He didn't expect there to be such a beautiful girl. The so-called prettiest girl in the class that he had been sending messages to pursue couldn't be compared with the girl in front of him. He stared at Qin Yitian with wide eyes and a face full of infatuation. He wanted to greet her in a cool way. Just like how he flirted with other girls at school. However, as soon as he had this idea, he began to become nervous. He was at a loss and his hair stood on end. It was as if he was not facing a peerless beauty, but a fierce monster. Moreover, Qin Yitian was walking towards him. The closer Qin Yitian got, the more intense his heart beat. Finally, dense beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Qin Yitian walked to Zhou Mingli and nodded to him like other juniors of the Fang family. Then she walked past him. Zhou Mingli didn't dare to look directly at Qin Yitian's eyes. At the moment when she nodded, he couldn't help blushing and hurriedly lowered his head. When Qin Yitian went far away, he was annoyed and felt that he was such a failure. After Qin Yitian entered the house, those men in black also stood at the door of the living room with gift boxes in their hands. Lu Wan looked at Qin Yitian and waited for his arrangement. She couldn't ask them to put away these gifts, nor could she ask so many people to put down the gifts and leave. There had to be a rule, right? Qin Yitian smiled and took Lu Wan to the first man in black. He opened the golden brocade box held by him and looked at the gifts inside. He said, "There is nothing special about this one. The red inkstone produced in Heishan has a strong ink color. The color hasn't faded after thousands of years. When it is ground, it has a strange fragrance. I know that you like calligraphy, so this stone is to add a touch of color to your masterpiece. Lu Wan was so shocked that her jaw almost fell to the ground. She said, "It is said that this inkstone can only be formed after thousands of years. It is one of the most precious treasures in the world. It is rare in the world and hard to find." Lu Wan looked at the large inkstone lying in the brocade box and gasped. She said, "Miss, this gift is really too precious. We can't accept it." Chapter 411. If people like Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin didn't know the value of the inkstone, it was understandable. After all, the inkstone rarely appeared in the world. Many people had never even heard of it, let alone seen it with their own eyes. It was said that because when Yuka had obtained a piece of inkstone, the bamboos he drew were different from other people. They looked vivid and lifelike, as if they were alive. Chao Buji wrote a poem for him, in which there were 2 lines, "You can draw bamboo, you have a well-thought-out plan." This was also the origin of the idiom, "have a well-thought-out plan," in later generations. Under the influence of her father, Lu Gong, Lu Wan was well-read. There was nothing she didn't know about astronomy, geography, classics, and history. If Qin Etienne hadn't pointed out the origin of this stone, she herself wouldn't have been able to see its strangeness. However, when Qin Etienne pointed out that this stone came from the Black Mountain in the far west and said its name, Lu Wan understood the true value of this stone. There was a strange saying, "Black heart magic stone can be seen, but red heart inkstone is hard to find." The stone in the box was the red heart inkstone that the ancient said was the most difficult to find. The middle part of it was dark red, like burning charcoal. One tael of black jade was worth 500 kilograms, so how much was such a big piece of black jade worth? Some things were so rare that it was difficult to measure their value with money. Because even if you had money, you might not be able to buy it. A treasured sword should be given to a hero, and a piece of black jade should be given to a master, Qin Etienne said with a smile. "When I go home, I'll ask my uncle to give me a painting." Qin Etienne ignored Lu Wan's objection and opened the second box held by the man in black. He glanced at the thing inside and said, "This is a phoenix coral from the East Sea. I have 2 pots at home, but it's a bit repetitive to place them, so I brought one pot." Qin Etienne glanced at the living room, pointed to a square mahogany table in the corner, and said, "Put it there." Etienne, this isn't appropriate, it's really not appropriate. Lu Wan still wanted to stop him. Qin Etienne opened the big box in the hands of the third man in black. There was a small silver bowl in the small bowl. There was a piece of black stuff in the small bowl. This was the ointment made from the shell of the black tortoise. It was cut into the size of a fingernail and placed in the silver bowl. After mixing it with warm water, it could be applied to the face before going to bed at night to keep youthful. Swallowing it could replenish qi, blood, and spirit. "Auntie, this is a gift specially prepared for you. You can try it later. If the effect is good, I'll cut more for you, sure." The 3 Fang sisters sucked in a breath of cold air. This kind of thing was fatally attractive to women. Qin Etienne opened the 4th huge box. Inside the box was a beautiful fish tank. 2 red fish were swimming in it, and there was a rootless plant that looked like a lotus leaf floating on the surface of the water. Qin Etienne obviously liked this gift very much. He held Lu Wan's hand and introduced it. "Auntie, there are 2 red dragons inside. I've raised them for a few years. They're not valuable, but I like this bunch of rootless white lotus the most. It's from the Changbai Heavenly Lake. Just like now, it floats on the surface of the water without roots. When it blooms white lotus, it can fill the whole house, even the whole yard with a refreshing fragrance. TSK, many people couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Qin Etienne still wanted to open the box below, but he was stopped by Lu Wan. Lu Wan looked at Qin Etienne, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Miss Etienne, these gifts are too expensive, really too expensive. Every one of them is priceless. We really can't accept them. I know that you're grateful to Mr. Fong, and Fong Yan will also understand, but you must take these gifts back." In Lu Wan's view, these gifts brought by Qin Etienne could be placed together as a treasure. Drawing a picture and throwing it out could cause a crazy treasure hunt in the outside world. No matter whose child she was, her parents would certainly not allow her to give these valuable collections to a teacher. Lu Wan even guessed that these gifts brought by this little girl were secretly moved out when her family was not around. At the end of the day, she was just a student. Qin Etienne laughed and said, "Auntie, these are all useful things. You can just use them as ordinary things. What graphite? It's just a little stronger in color. And that rootless white lotus is not as good as a pot of plum blossoms. Just take it as a story and don't take it to heart. Since I brought them out, Auntie, you must accept them no matter what. How can you take back the gifts that you've given out? But these gifts, Auntie, don't worry." Qin Etienne comforted her with a smile. She took Lu Wan's hand and walked to another box, saying, "Come and have a look at this box." Fong Yan lost several times in a row and lost all the money he had just won. He even took out his wallet and put some of his capital in it. Of course, the advantage of losing money was that Yi Ro no longer complained about his smelly feet and kicked him from time to time. Finally, he won another round. When he was waiting to receive the money, the cell phone in Fong Yan's pocket rang. Fong Yan apologized and put down the long cards in his hand. He took out his cell phone and found it was a call from Fong Yingying. Fong Yan answered the phone and asked, "What's the matter?" "Junior Marshal Uncle, come back quickly. Your student has come to pay a New Year's visit," Fong Yingying said excitedly. "Student? Come to pay a New Year's visit?" Fong Yan's first thought was that Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had come, because among his students, only these two girls had been to Swallow Dock and knew his home address. However, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had just returned to Huaqing before the New Year's Day, and their parents couldn't let them go to Yanjing on the first day of the new year. Besides, when he called them last night, they also said that they would return to Yanjing after the Lantern Festival. Which student would come to pay a New Year's visit to him? "Junior Marshal Uncle, come back quickly. I'm busy, so I'll hang up." Fong Yingxiong shouted and hung up the phone. He dared to hang up on me. Fong Yan was infuriated. Do they still respect me as an elder? What's wrong? Something happened at home. Hearing the content of Fong Yan's call, the old ancestor put the long cards on the table and said, "Go back if you have something to do. I'm also tired and need a rest." The poker field was like a battlefield, and escaping was a big crime. Fong Yan said with a guilty face, "Old ancestor, do you want me to play a few more rounds with you?" "No need, no need. I want to play cards, and I'm not afraid of not being able to find a partner. Go back to your business," the old ancestor said. Fong Yan glanced at Yi Ro and said, "It said that a student came to pay a New Year's visit. I'll go back and have a look." Yi Ro didn't respond, and just lowered her head to play with the long cards in her hand. After Fong Yan put on his shoes and left, the old ancestor looked at Yi Ro with a smile and said, "You little girl, Fong Yan is a guest. How can you say that his feet are smelly? Why? You're unhappy because he won a few rounds. He's an idiot." Yi Ro said. "He's not an idiot. He's a smart person." The old ancestor sighed softly and said, "You think he keeps winning, so you're worried that I'll feel uncomfortable." But, if he lets me keep winning, will I feel comfortable in my heart? Because I'm older, you guys always take care of me. You don't want to win, and she, the silly girl, pretended to play the wrong cards for me. Your father doesn't want to play cards with me, and your second and third uncles don't want to win. No one was willing to win against me. They just wanted me to win. At first, I was happy, but after being coaxed by you for so many years, I feel that playing cards is meaningless. Fong Yan, that kid, didn't treat me as an outsider. When he first arrived, he tried his best to win. After he won, he lost all the money he won. He made me nervous for a while, but he also gave me a lot of face. Tell me, how can I not like him when he's so considerate towards me? Yi Ro was stunned for a long time, and then she scolded, he's a slippery guy. The old ancestor nodded with a smile and said, you're right this time. This guy is slippery. But I heard on the phone that a student came to visit him for the new year. What kind of student could come to our Swallow Dock? Yi Ro was also confused. She knew it couldn't be Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin she was familiar with, but she couldn't guess who it was. Suddenly, she remembered the pair of eyes that were brighter than the moonlight in the night. It had been so long, but she still had a deep memory of those eyes. Perhaps anyone who saw that pair of eyes would find it hard to forget. Is she here? Yi Ro said softly. Who is here? The old ancestor asked. Yi Ro shook her head and didn't want to answer this question. The old ancestor gave Shi a look, and Shi immediately understood and said, Old ancestor, I'm going to play with Du Wan for a while. I'll be back soon. After that, she turned around and ran out of the door. Yi Ro knew that the old ancestor asked Shi to inquire about the news, so she didn't stop her. She never forced others, and she didn't like others to force themselves. When Fong Yan returned home, Qinitian was in the backyard paying his grandfather, Fong Hui, a New Year's greeting. She took the cage that Eagle Moo was holding and lifted the black silk on top of the cage. Inside was a beautiful, snow-white bird with a flat beak. Qinitian handed the bird to Fong Hui and said, Grandpa, this is a King Kong eagle. It doesn't usually make a sound, but when it does, it's like the roar of a King Kong. It can drive away evil spirits and keep people safe. Looking closely, you and the King Kong eagle look alike. They all look very majestic. Fong Hui took the Vajra eagle and laughed. Where did this girl come from? Her words and actions are as sweet as honey. This is a good gift. With this King Kong eagle, I don't have to worry about having nothing to do all day. Fong Yan stood at the door with a bitter smile. Looking at Qinitian's back, he said, Are you going to buy my whole family? Yes. Qinitian answered matter-of-factly. I want them all to like me. Chapter 412. A woman like Qinitian would be regarded as a goddess wherever she went. After Qinitian came, she became the center of the Fong family. Her every move and smile was the focus of everyone's attention. When Qinitian was in the living room, everyone stood in the living room to watch. Qinitian said that she was going to visit Fong Yan's grandfather. Everyone followed her to the backyard. Of course, the closest ones were Lu Wan, Fong Yan's 3 aunts, and several other female members of the Fong family. Fong Hao, Xiao Qingxin, and Zhou Fan were men, so they were embarrassed to get too close. Zhou Mingli didn't have such scruples. He stood at the door of the cottage with a tablet computer. All his thoughts were on Qinitian. He didn't need to say a word. He just looked at her quietly, which made people's hearts beat fast. He knew that he was in love. He decided that he would ask her name. He would write down her phone number. He would pursue her crazily. What should I do without you? Who will wipe my saliva? He thought that this idea had taken root in his heart and was indestructible. However, Chinitian's words made him heartbroken. Chinitian turned around naturally. Her smile seemed to light up the room, which was a little dim because of the gloomy weather. At least in Zhou Mingli's eyes, there was a hot sun rising in the room. His mouth was dry, and he couldn't look straight at her. I just want them all to like me, she said. If people still had some doubts about the relationship between Chinitian and Fang Yan before, the truth was revealed when Chinitian said this. Everyone present looked at Fang Yan and then at Chinitian, dumbfounded. What was the relationship between these two people? They had long felt that there was something wrong with these two people. What kind of students would empty their family's treasures just to visit their teacher? Just these things that she had sent over, even if they were used as betrothal gifts, would be enough to make a person's back bend over. What's more, this was just a New Year's gift. How big of a deal was this? Lu Wan had mixed feelings in her heart. She wanted to cry, laugh, love, and be angry. How did Fang Yan end up harming the little girl? Fang Yan's 3 aunts were also surprised, but they couldn't help but feel proud of their nephew, Fang Yan. They were naturally elated that their nephew could be liked by such an outstanding girl. Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin were naturally full of joy. If Fang Yan really got together with this girl, it would be very beneficial to the Fang family and them. Perhaps he could borrow the other party's strength in some way. Zhou Fan's heart once again experienced an intense turmoil. Why was he so blind that he couldn't see all the good things about this kid? If it weren't for the idiotic things he said and did at that time, he wouldn't be in such an embarrassing situation in the Fang family now. He said that he would find a job for Fang Yan. The gifts Fang Yan's student sent today would probably let Fang Yan live a life of luxury for the rest of his life. Zhou Mingli's eyes turned red. He was very angry and felt wronged. He was angry that the fairy-like girl didn't like him. He felt wronged because, how could cousin Fang Yan like his student? Did he have any morality? Did he have any sense of shame? Fang Hui was still confused until now. He was chatting with an old guy in the room. He said that a little girl was Fang Yan's student and wanted to visit him for New Year's. As an old man, he couldn't refuse the kindness of the younger generation. As a result, such a beautiful, lovely and charming girl came in. Every part of her body made people feel comfortable. She said some auspicious words and sent him a priceless King Kong eagle. This kind of eagle lived in the cliffs of the northern frontier. It had a keen sense of smell and could fly thousands of miles. It was difficult to catch it unless it had been a professional eagle hunter for more than 10 years. When Fang Hui was young, he knew that the young chief had raised such a King Kong eagle. After his legs were paralyzed, he had never seen such a spiritual bird again. He didn't expect that he would get one today. Just like how a handsome guy would want a sports car, as a martial artist, who wouldn't want such a battle eagle? It was also the first time he met Chinitian, but he didn't expect the girl to be so bold. After a while, he smiled and said, Fang Yan, it seems that you're not a good teacher. You're speechless after being refuted by your own student. Fang Yan smiled bitterly and said, it's really a headache to meet such a student. Chinitian quickly spoke up for Fang Yan. She smiled and said to Fang Hui, Grandpa, Mr. Fang is a good teacher. All the students in the school like him. Hundreds of people go to his lectures. Really? Fang Hui looked at Fang Yan and said, it seems that you not only inherited our Fang family's talent in martial arts, but also have a strong cultural gene. It's a good thing to be well versed in both literature and martial arts. You need to keep it up. Lu Wan pulled Fang Yan's hand and signaled him to follow her to the yard. Fang Yan, who is this student of yours? She sent a lot of gifts. Although I don't know the value, just hearing the names made my hands tremble. I said we can't accept them, but she didn't want to take them back. What should we do with these things? Fong Yan thought for a while and said, Mom, don't worry. I'll talk to her. Okay. You talk to her. Lu Wan said. We don't accept undeserved rewards. No matter how precious these things are, we can't accept gifts from others. Talk to her and ask her to take these gifts back. Okay. Fong Yan said with a smile. Fong Yan went back to the room and said to Chinitian, let Grandpa rest for a while. Let's go out for a walk. Chinitian said goodbye to Fong Hui obediently and said, Grandpa, I'll chat with you in a while. I like chatting with old people the most. Okay. Fong Hui laughed. Grandpa is waiting for you. There were also many people watching at the gate of the Fong family's yard. Fong Yan couldn't take Chinitian out for a stroll. He had to take her to a remote place in the martial arts hall and said, Why are you here? I'm here to wish Mr. Fong a happy new year. Chinitian said seriously. Isn't it natural for a student to wish a teacher a happy new year? That's true, but you don't need to bring such expensive gifts. My mother is such a gentle person, and your gift scared her. I was also scared when I saw the King Kong eagle. These are all rare treasures, and you just casually took them out to give away. I didn't just casually take them out, each gift was carefully selected by me in the storage room. Chinitian explained, I'm not giving them away, I'm giving them to my teacher. Fong Yan smiled bitterly and said, Who would give such gifts to their teacher? My family. Chinitian pointed at her own face. Chinitian put her hands in the pockets of her down jacket, kicked the snow at her feet and said, Don't worry, I told my mother when I came, I said I wanted to visit my savior, and she asked me to bring a few gifts. These were approved by my mother, I didn't steal them from the storage room. Even if I wanted to steal, I wouldn't do it so openly. Mu Ying is my mother's confidant, he won't keep my secret. Bring them back. Fong Yan advised. These gifts are too expensive. We can't afford it. Besides, as I told you that night, that matter is long over, and you have already repaid me. Now it is I who owes you, not the other way around. You really want me to bring them back? Yes. Then let's smash it, Chinitian said, waving her hand. Whichever one you want me to bring back, I'll smash it. Do you want to try? How can you do that? Because I have money. Chinitian said. What's wrong with rich people being willful? Chinitian smiled and looked at Fong Yan with his beautiful eyes, and said, In fact, these gifts are also gifts from the Qin family. Thank you for saving my life. In addition, you may not know the value of the Rubik's Cube. When the product is on the market, it can bring us huge and amazing profits. It may be an unimaginable number. I'm just recommending her. Without your recommendation, I probably wouldn't be interested in letting her see my mother, right? Chinitian said with a chuckle. Sometimes things are so clever. Okay. Fong Yan nodded. I'll accept these gifts. I'm just keeping them for you for the time being. Chinitian didn't want to talk about this topic with Fong Yan, and said, Mr. Fong, I came all the way from Yanjing to visit you for the new year. Do you want me to stay in your house for a few days? You don't want to. Can't we have a meal together? If you're willing to stay for a few days, it's naturally not a problem. As long as you don't mind the shabby conditions here. Fong Yan said sincerely. It's just that we don't have that many rooms in our house, and you brought too many bodyguards. How about letting them go back first? I can assure you that you won't be in any danger in Swallow Dock. You agree? Chinitian said with a smile. I thought you would find a reason to refuse. It's not a big deal to begin with, Fang Yan said. It's naturally not a problem to eat at home. Fang Yan and Qin Tian were chatting in the backyard when Fang Yingying sneakily walked over. Seeing that Fang Yan didn't say anything, he looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. Fang Yan couldn't stand it anymore and said, Fang Yingying, if you have something to say, just say it, why are you sneaking around? Fang Yingying grinned, but his smile was very unnatural. He lowered his voice and said, Junior Marshal Uncle, Miss Yi came to visit. Chapter 413. Yi Ro is here. Why is Yi Ro here? Yi Ro was a special case in Swallow Dock. She was aloof and independent. She had a close relationship with the old drunkard, but no one knew that she had a good relationship with anyone else. In the past, no one had ever heard of her paying a New Year's visit to anyone's family, nor had she paid a New Year's visit to the Fang family. She always went through the back door when she came to the Fang family. That way, she could take a shortcut to the courtyard where the old drunkard lived. Even in front of Fang Yan's grandfather, Fang Hui, her attitude was quite cold. Because she was a woman of the Yi family, because of her temperament, and most importantly, because she was beautiful and violent, everyone understood her behavior. As time went by, there were even some people who appreciated her. They felt that she was in line with the poem, There is a Beauty in the North, peerless and isolated. Besides, the Yi family was prosperous, so it was not Yi Ro's turn to socialize in public. She just needed to practice martial arts and be happy with her ancestor. Why is Yi Ro here today? Fang Yan looked at Fang Yingying confusedly. Fang Yingying shook his head, indicating that he didn't know either. Slap. Fang Yan slapped Fang Yingying's head and scolded, You're here. Why can't you tell me? Why do you keep your voice down like a thief? Why can't you tell others about it? Fang Yingying looked aggrieved. He covered his head and said, Junior Marshal Uncle, I just don't want you to be in a difficult position. Slap. Fang Yan slapped him again and scolded even more fiercely. He said, What's so difficult about it? What's so difficult about it? No, no, Fang Yingying covered his head and ran away like a rat. Junior Marshal Uncle was so angry that he knew he must be in a difficult position. Fang Yan looked at Qin Tian and said with a smile, Yi Ro is my neighbor and my friend. Today is the first day of the spring festival. She came to visit, she's pretty, right? Qin Tian asked. She's all right. Fang Yan replied reservedly, she's the prettiest girl in our village. Everyone knew that the #1 beauty of Swallow Dock was Yi Ro. Phoenix was also very beautiful, but she did not belong to Swallow Fort. Are you the most handsome guy in your village? Qin Tian giggled and asked. Bai Xiu's loathsome face appeared in Fang Yan's mind at the mention of the word country bumpkin. Therefore, Fang Yan slapped Bai Xiu's face out of his mind and said, They said so, but I don't care about these false reputations. What kind of village flowers and grass are they? Is there any point in lining them up here and there? Qin Tian nodded in agreement and said, That makes sense. They say I'm the prettiest girl in Rosefinch High. I don't care about this kind of thing. What class belle and campus belle? It's not like you can make a living out of comparing. After that, they looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. Fang Yan had always felt that Qin Tian had a maturity that didn't match her age. Fang Yan also felt that Qin Tian and he had an indescribable spiritual tacit understanding. This girl was really an angel who fell to the earth. When Fang Yan took Qin Tian back to the house, Yi Ro was sitting in the living room with Fang Yan's mother, Lu Wan, and Fang Yan's aunts, drinking tea. Yi Ro was still wearing the festive cloth button gown and black cotton skirt. She didn't touch the teacup in front of her and just answered the questions of Lu Wan and Fang Yan's 3 aunts politely. Lu Wan asked a question, and Yi Ro answered one by one. Lu Wan didn't speak, and Yi Ro didn't take the initiative to find a topic. She was calm, patient, and didn't fight. She looked like a cultivator who had cultivated for thousands of years. Lu Wan's language skills were excellent, but she couldn't stand Yi Ro's temper. She asked a lot of questions, and Yi Ro answered them in 2 or 3 words. For example, she said that the last time she saw the ancestor was in the summer, and she took she for a walk in the village. She hadn't seen the ancestor for a long time. How was she? The weather was cold, and she had to take care of herself. Yi Ro's answer was only 2 words, she was fine. Another example, Fong Yan's aunt said that when Ro's dress was really beautiful. The golden stitches were fine, and the embroidered phoenix was like a real one. This dress must have been sewn by Sister Wen. The sister Wen she mentioned was Wen Xinya, Yi Ro's mother. Yi Ro's answer was still 2 words, yes. When Lu Wan and the 3 sisters of the Fong family were at their wits' end, Fong Yan finally entered the house. Lu Wan waved to Fong Yan and said, "Fong Yan, Wen Ro is here. You young people should have a good talk." Then she looked at Qin Etienne and said with a smile, "Etienne, since you are here, have fun in our swallow dock for a few days. You sit here for a while. I'll go to the kitchen and prepare lunch." "Thank you, aunts," Qin Etienne said sweetly. This girl had a very high IQ. Once she made up her mind to do something, there was no possibility of failure. For example, she made up her mind to win the favor of everyone in the Fong family. "I'll go to the kitchen, too," Fong Yisin, the eldest aunt, said. "I'll go to find Menjing and the baby elephant. I don't know where these 2 children are." Fong Yiling, the second aunt, also stood up and left. I'll go to see where numerology is." Fong Yijing, the third aunt, also ran away. Thus, only Fong Yan, Qin Etienne, and Yi Ro were left in the big living room. Yi Ro sat on the sofa. She didn't drink tea, didn't speak, and didn't even look at Fong Yan and Qin Etienne. Qin Etienne stood in the courtyard with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. There was an inexplicable smile on his face, and he looked at Yi Ro thoughtfully. Fong Yan opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. Fong Yan felt that Fong Yingying was really a wise man sometimes. What he said really came true. It was really difficult for him to be stuck in the middle. However, it was not a solution to always be in such a stalemate. Therefore, Fong Yan turned to look at Qin Etienne and said, "Do you want some tea?" "Okay." Qin Etienne nodded. "I'll go and pour some tea for you," Fong Yan said. He turned around and ran out of the door. He felt that he needed to go to the yard and take a deep breath of fresh air. It was so exciting. After Fong Yan left, there were only Qin Etienne and Yi Ro in the room. Qin Etienne was still looking at Yi Ro with a smile, and Yi Ro finally raised her head and glanced at Qin Etienne. Qin Etienne walked towards Yi Ro and sat down on the mahogany sofa in front of her. He was dignified and elegant, and had the same strong aura. Qin Etienne looked at Yi Ro and asked with concern, "Sister, are you feeling better?" "I'm fine," Yi Ro answered expressionlessly. "That's good. When I saw you last time, I was worried that there would be sequelae in your body. We are all women, and our bodies are weaker than men. Sister, you must take care of yourself." "Not necessarily," Yi Ro said. "What not necessarily?" "A woman's body is not necessarily weaker than a man's," Yi Ro said. "Could it be that your body is better than Teacher Fong's?" "I've seen Mr. Fong's kung fu is very good, indeed better," Yi Ro said. "Sister, you're so awesome. Mr. Fong is already so powerful, but he still can't beat you," Qin Etienne praised. "Sister, you must be the number 1 in Swallow Dock," right? Yi Rou stared at Qin Tian with vigilance. This girl set a trap with just a few words. She wanted to lead me into the ditch. If she said that she was the number one in Swallow Dock, then where was Fang Yen? If she wasn't the number one in Swallow Dock, then wasn't it a lie when he said that a woman's body was not necessarily weaker than a man's? Yi Rou picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip of fragrant tea. She didn't answer Qin Tian's question, but said softly, "Our Swallow Dock rarely has outsiders come in." The subtext was that those who came in were all outsiders. "I'm not an outsider. I'm Mr. Fang's friend," Qin Tian said with a smile. "Besides, Swallow Dock belongs to Huaxia. Huaxia's people can all come in." Yi Rou ignored Qin Tian's counterattack and said lightly, "We guard Huaxia's Swallow Dock, and we are also Huaxia's Swallow Dock. Swallow Dock is one with us. For us, those who don't belong to Swallow Dock are outsiders. Just like those who don't have the surname Qin, it's difficult to become a member of the Qin family." Qin Tian nodded and said, "The general gets off the horse and the prime minister gets off the sedan chair. The people of Swallow Dock are indeed qualified to say this. But not everyone is qualified to be a member of Swallow Dock." Qin Tian crossed his hands and rubbed them gently, saying, "But if there is such a person who is qualified, that person must be me, because I cherish your glory, admire your sacrifice, recognize your value, and I'm willing to go through thick and thin with you. Swallow Dock is Huaxia's Swallow Dock. Every person of Huaxia can do their part for Swallow Dock. Do you still not qualify to be a member of Swallow Dock by doing this?" Qin Tian smiled and said, "I've only heard that people of Swallow Dock are brave in killing enemies, but I've never heard that people of Swallow Dock are heartless to their friends. Am I right, sister? If you come, Swallow Dock will naturally welcome you. Does sister welcome me?" Yi Rou was stunned. She didn't expect that he would pursue this question. She said with slight annoyance, "I won't tell you." In terms of language expression, she was indeed not as good as Qin Tian, who had hidden tricks and traps in every sentence. If you were not careful, you would be trapped in them and unable to move. However, she also knew very well that this excessively beautiful girl in front of her couldn't fight with her one-on-one. Otherwise, she had 10,000 ways to make her black and blue. Yi Rou thought that she still liked Fang Yen, because when she was unhappy, she could beat him up. Chapter 4:14. If Yi Rou was a white peony, then Qin Tian was a red rose. Yi Rou's temperament was soft but firm. She looked white and quiet, aloof from worldly affairs. However, her appearance was magnificent, luxurious. She had the reputation of being a national beauty, the queen of flowers. There was a poem that said, "Wealth and romance are the best, and all flowers bow their heads to the fragrant dust." The peony didn't compete, but no flower could compete with it. Qin Tian didn't hide. She was as passionate as fire and charming as water. Whether it was a cliff, a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, she would rush over with her eyes closed. She brought others a beautiful illusion of love by burning herself resolutely. The branches and leaves had sharp thorns, and if one was not careful, he would be stabbed by her. Now, the white peony and the red rose gathered together, competing to bloom. That kind of beauty was dazzling. Unfortunately, there was no audience in the living room. Even Zhou Mingli, who fell in love with Qin Tian at first sight, was completely desperate after knowing that she liked Fang Yen. He ran to the stone river to enjoy the cool wind and pretend to be depressed. It was not the first time that they met, but it was the first time that they had a conflict. In other words, it was the first time that they communicated with each other as enemies. When Yi Rou said, "I won't tell you," Qin Tian couldn't help but be a little surprised. She never thought that the tough woman who treated Fang Yen as a mortal enemy at school would have such a girlish side. If those guys who liked violence and regarded her as an idol and wanted to be whipped by her every day saw this scene, their eyeballs would probably fall to the ground. However, Chinitian didn't feel contradictory at all. She was such a person. When she wanted to beat you, she would beat you. When she didn't want to tell you, she wouldn't tell you. In a sense, she was braver than herself, more direct than herself, and more willful than herself. Facing such an opponent, Chinitian had a feeling of palpitation. Chinitian was not afraid of any opponent, but in the field of love, she only hoped that they were unique to each other. Because if you cared too much, you would be afraid of failure. Even if the possibility was minuscule, they would still worry about it. Chinitian looked straight into Yi Ro's eyes and said, "Don't say it if you don't want to. I already know the answer." Yi Ro knew what the answer was. Both of them were smart people, so there was no need to be too straightforward. That would only make the relationship between them more awkward. They shouldn't be enemies. Yi Ro thought Chinitian was the prettiest girl she had ever seen. She even thought she was more beautiful than herself. Her facial features were exquisite and dazzling, like the blazing sun, like the bright moon, like the brightest star among the stars. She sparkled in the crowd. Chinitian also felt that Yi Ro had an aura that was ethereal and pure. Clean, pure, and approachable. If it was said that his aura would make people feel oppressed and retreat 3 feet away, then Yi Ro's aura would make people feel pity and respect that they couldn't bear to disturb her. They should appreciate each other and become best friends. How could they be enemies? Thinking of this, both of them couldn't help but be fascinated. The room was very quiet, but the atmosphere didn't make people feel awkward. 2 extremely beautiful girls sat there without saying a word, but it didn't make people feel strange, as if it should be so. Fong Yen, who had been out for a long time, finally came back with a cup of hot tea. He put the cup in front of Chinitian and said, "Be careful, it's hot." Seeing that the tea in front of Yi Ro was cold, he picked up the cup and said, "I'll get you a cup of hot tea." Yi Ro glanced at Fong Yen and said, "If you don't want to sit here, come in when it's time to eat." Chinitian giggled and said, "Mr. Fong, are you afraid that I will fight with Sister Yi? I can't beat her." "No. How could it be?" Fong Yan wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, "I just went to the kitchen to have a look. I'm afraid that the food they make is too greasy. I know you guys don't like to eat greasy food." "I like to eat meat," Yi Ro said. "The ambush you made last time in the back mountain was very good." "I also like to eat meat," Chinitian said. "Did you forget? In Huaqing, we went to eat at Zhang Yuan restaurant. The T-bone steak there is very good." Fong Yan's smile was uglier than a crying face. "I like to eat meat too. So when I was very young, I followed my friends in the village to catch sparrows, rabbits, and grasshoppers. Then, I cooked the ingredients myself. Tian hasn't eaten it yet. I'll take you there when I have the chance." Yi Ro looked at Chinitian and said, "The friends Fong Yen mentioned are Yi Fengxing, Zhu Xiaodan, and Li Xiaotian. They even formed a group called Swallow Fort's Pretty Men Team. Isn't it funny?" "It's really funny." So he was this childish when he was young. There are things that are even more childish. Every year when we compete, he would hug my leg and beg for mercy when he couldn't beat me, crying and yelling for me not to hit his face. No way. Mr. Fong has such a shameless side. But I've known him for a long time, and I know his character quite well. There are also some things you don't know. I'll get to know him later. He lived in Swallow Fort for more than 20 years. We can't change the length of life, but we can determine the width of life. I always think the width of life is more abundant. Practicing martial arts requires constant dripping to wear through a stone. Tai Chi requires instant enlightenment. Fong Yen suddenly found a serious problem. He only cared about pouring tea for Chinitian and changing tea for Yiro. He forgot that he hadn't drunk hot tea yet. No wonder he felt sweaty and thirsty. It turned out that he hadn't drunk water for a long time. Fong Yingying, Fong Yen turned around and shouted toward the backyard. No one answered. Fong Haohan, still no one answered. Fong Yen shook his head helplessly, as if he was talking to himself or explaining to Chinitian and Yiro, I don't know where these two guys are. They don't know how to entertain the guests, and they can't find anyone to drink a cup of tea. I'll go pour a cup of tea. So, Fong Yen got up and ran outside. He really couldn't stand it anymore. He sat in front of the two women and felt out of breath. These two people were talking about something irrelevant, but why did he feel that there was a hidden killing intent in every word? Moreover, he was the chicken that was being coveted by the killing intent. If you're like this, you might as well fight to your heart's content. Muing was standing in the yard enjoying the plum blossoms. Seeing Fong Yen running out, he said with a smile, It's not easy to deal with this kind of situation, is it? Yes. Fong Yen sighed softly. I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me. I'm a shy person and I've never been in love before. I really have no experience in dealing with girls. That's a pity. Muing reached out his hand to catch a snowflake. His handsome face was absorbed in watching the fluff-like snowflake melting in his palm. Miss is not an easy person to deal with. Fong Yen looked at Muing curiously and asked, How do you usually deal with her? Deal with her? Muing shook his head. I've never been able to deal with Mississippi. I do whatever she says. Fong Yen really envied Chinitian. It was such a happy thing to have such a brainless fan. Fong Yen looked for Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan all over the yard. He felt that he needed them very much. Yiro, Chinitian, Fong Yingying, and Fong Haohan all knew them. Moreover, these two idiots were the spies that Yiro had arranged around him. Perhaps she didn't need to arrange them. They were born to be rebellious. If they could sit in the living room with him, they could talk about their daily lives, talk about the past, and make jokes. Time would pass quickly. The two women wouldn't stab him in the dark, and he wouldn't feel like sitting on pins and needles. However, Fong Yen looked all over the yard and didn't see Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan. They seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Those two bastards. Fong Yen gnashed his teeth and cursed. Beside Stone River. It was a good place near the call, facing the wind and the sun. Two figures, one fat and one thin, were tightly huddled together, looking at the fire in front of them expectantly. How well is it? Fong Yingying smelled the fragrance in the air and asked. Fong Haohan sniffed hard and said, It's well done. Open the pot. Fong Yingying shouted. Then, he grabbed at the open fire above the fire with both hands like an iron rake. Fong Haohan didn't want to be outdone. He used a small iron piece to fly up and down, and the red-hot firewood was pushed aside by him. Under the fire, there were several big black sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes were covered with dust and didn't look good, but the fragrance they emitted made people swallow their saliva uncontrollably. Brother Hero, you first. Fong Yingying modestly and politely made a gesture of invitation. Brother Hero, you first. Fong Yingying was also very polite and gave way to the older one. Then, the two reached out to grab the biggest sweet potato at the same time. The hero chooses first. Fong Yingying grabbed the sweet potato and said. Brother Hero, you choose first. Fong Haohan also grabbed the sweet potato and said. You let me choose first. Let go first. You can choose anything except this. Is this still called me choosing first? You didn't let me choose first. Do you want to fight? The fat on Fong Yingying's face shook again. Fight after you're full, Fong Yingying suggested. Fong Yingying felt that what Fong Haohan said made sense, so the big sweet potato was divided into half by them. They greedily ate the roasted sweet potatoes in their hands, feeling that there was nothing more blissful than this. Brother Hero, what do you think Junior Martial Uncle is doing now? Fong Yingying asked curiously. He's looking for us. Fong Yingying took a bite of the sweet potato. It was so hot that his tongue rolled around in his mouth. He's definitely looking for us to go in and flirt. Does he think we're stupid? We're not going in. Brother Hero, if you were Junior Martial Uncle, who would you choose? Fong Haohan asked. Fong Yingying raised his dirty fat face and thought seriously for a while. He slapped Fong Haohan's head and said angrily, "Don't ask me such difficult questions when we're eating." Chapter 4:15. Fong Haohan was slapped on the head and said with grievance, "Since we have nothing to do, let's discuss it." Fong Yingxiong took a bite of the sweet potato and chewed it in his mouth. His face was full of sadness as he said, "How can I choose? Miss Yi is beautiful, Miss Qin is also beautiful. Miss Ye's martial arts are good, Miss Qin's background is great, Miss Yi is very good to me, Miss Qin is also very good to me. Which should I choose? Which can I choose? If I choose gentle, what about heaven reliance? If I choose heaven reliance, what about gentle? No matter which one of these girls I let down, it would be an unforgivable sin, God will send me to hell." That's true. Fong Haohan nodded in agreement. If I were Junior Martial Uncle, I wouldn't know who to choose either. Every one of them is so outstanding, every one of them is so affectionate, Junior Martial Uncle isn't that good either. Why would they choose Junior Martial Uncle? That's right. Fong Yingxiong agreed. He's handsome, but everyone says Fatso looks lucky. Skinny looks like he's lucky too, Fong Haohan added. Yes, Fatso and Skinny both look lucky. Fong Yingying couldn't help but bring Fong Haohan along. At least, they were on the same side on this issue. And we look safe. Which girl follows us, TSK, we definitely won't have to worry about cheating. Even if she has a beautiful girlfriend, we won't even look at them. Junior Martial Uncle is funny, we aren't worse than him, everyone laughed at the joke I told last time. Then what's the difference? Fong Yingying asked doubtfully. Is it because our luck is especially bad? Yes. It must be bad luck. Fong Haohan said. Also, we can't always stand with Junior Martial Uncle. Why? It's not that I'm worried that others will think that he's the red flower and we're the green leaf. The key is that we're one generation younger than him. Think about it, if a girl who likes us hears that we're going to call him Junior Martial Uncle, won't she be scared away? Yes, yes. Fong Haohan nodded repeatedly. That's what I said. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had praised us for being cute, but why are you so close to Junior Martial Uncle? It's because they know that if they follow us, they have to call Junior Martial Uncle Uncle. If they grow up and marry Junior Martial Uncle, we have to call them a master's wife. Who wouldn't want such a big advantage? But we also have our own style. Fong Yingying tore off a piece of sweet potato skin and said, when Junior Martial Uncle is now in a terrible mess like a headless fly, we're eating roasted sweet potatoes with relish. This kind of life, I wouldn't exchange it even for a fairy. Yes, I wouldn't exchange it even for a fairy. Fong Haohan echoed. If it's a fairy sister, I'd exchange it. Junior Martial Uncle is so pitiful. Fong Yingying sighed and said. Yes. Junior Martial Uncle is so pitiful. Fong Haohan took a bite of the sweet potato and said bitterly, I really want to bear this unbearable suffering for Junior Martial Uncle. Sigh. Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan suddenly lost interest in talking, but the sweet potato in their hands was still sweet and delicious. When lunch was ready, the Fangs had to eat at the table. Qin Tian and Yi Rou sat together, Fong Yan sat next to Yi Rou, and Lu Wan sat next to Qin Tian. Fong Hui sat at the main table, and Fong Yan's 3 aunts and 3 uncles sat on both sides of the table. Zhou Mingli stole a bottle of Shadozi to celebrate his breakup again, but he got drunk halfway and was carried back by Zhou Fan. Fong Hui looked at Qin Tian, then looked at Yi Rou, and said with a smile, "Eat, eat. Just treat it as your own home." Lu Wan helped Qin Tian and Yi Rou get some food, and said, "You two eat more, you're too thin." Qin Tian rushed to help Lu Wan serve soup, and said, "It's cold, Auntie, you should drink more soup to warm your stomach." She was going to ladle soup for the 3 sisters of the Fong family. How could the 3 of them dare to let this young miss do it? Her extravagance and the gifts she had sent today had really shocked them. They didn't know what was going on, but they felt that this girl was too ostentatious, but they were very happy. Every one of them was of the highest quality, and they had never heard of such treasures. Who would dislike gifts that were too expensive? Fong Yijing especially admired her sister-in-law's determination. Zhou Fan was a small leader in the unit, and when her subordinates sent some bags, branded watches and so on to her home, she would throw them back mercilessly. But if those subordinates also sent gifts like this young lady of the Qin family, such as a piece of red ink stone, a basin of phoenix coral, and a big bowl of black turtle ointment, who wouldn't want to challenge their own weakness like this? Fong Yixing had to drink with guests at the Li family's house at noon, so he didn't come back for lunch. The 3 aunts of the Fangs didn't say anything, and the 3 uncles of the Fangs didn't know what to say. Even Lu Wan only talked about some interesting stories about Swallow Dock and Fong Yan under Qin Tian's lead. It had to be said that this was the dullest lunch that Fong Yan had ever had since he came back home. Fong Hui was the first to put down his bowl and chopsticks, saying that he was full. Fong Yijing hurriedly pushed the old man back to the backyard, and then he was unwilling to go to the table again. The others didn't have such good luck. The guests hadn't left, and they couldn't just leave their bowls and leave. So they could only eat unhurriedly. When others talked, they listened. When others joked, they also laughed for a while. Qin Tian and Yi Rou put down their bowls and chopsticks, and the others felt relieved as if a big stone had been lifted from their hearts. These 2 young girls actually had such power, pressuring others to the point that they couldn't breathe. Lu Wan asked someone to clean up the bowls and chopsticks, and said, "You young people can sit and drink tea and chat. I'll go to rest for a while, I have the habit of taking a nap." Soon, Fong Yan found that only he, Yi Rou, and Qin Tian were left in the living room. Fong Yan thought for a while and said, "Let me go out with you." Yi Rou went straight to the outside and said, "I'm going home." Qin Tian looked at Fong Yan and said with a smile, "Although I really want to stay for a few days, I have to go back." Fong Yan knew that Qin Tian couldn't really stay. If she dared to stay in his house, the Qin family would be in chaos. Fong Yan nodded and said, "I'll see you off." Fong Yan walked Qin Tian to the parking place of the training hall. Qin Tian stood still and turned to look at Fong Yan, saying, "Mr. Fong, when will we meet next time?" "I'll go back to watching after the spring festival," Fong Yan said. "Since you're a teacher there, you should do your job well. You must finish what you started." Qin Tian nodded and said, "I can't go to watching. I'll accept the new position my mother arranged for me on the 8th. But wherever you are, my eyes will be there." Fong Yan smiled bitterly and said, "Take care of yourself and be careful." Qin Tian pointed at Muing and said, "I'll take care of myself. My safety is their job." Fong Yan looked at Muing, who shrugged his shoulders and said, "Don't worry. As long as I'm alive, she will be alive. If I die, I won't care so much. Thank you, Fong Yen said sincerely. What are you thanking me for? This is my job, Muing said. Qin Etian walked to Fong Yen, and Fong Yen took the initiative to open his arms. Qin Etian smiled and threw herself into Fong Yan's arms. She hugged Fong Yan's waist tightly and said, I have a scar on my chest. The doctor said I can remove it with lasers or golden chrysalis muscle nourishing powder. I said I should keep it. It's a witness. Witness what? That I have the courage to risk my life for another person. Qin Etian left with her luxury motorcade. Fong Yen stood there for a long time. When Fong Yen returned home, Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan finally showed up. Fong Yen grabbed Fong Yingying and asked angrily, Where have you been? Hero was in a bad mood. I went out with him, Fong Yingying said with a sad face. His Xiaobai, what's wrong with Xiaobai? Fong Yen asked anxiously. Xiaobai was Fong Haohan's rabbit. The rabbit was his lover, his lifeblood. Usually, Fong Yingying wouldn't even let him touch it. If something happened to Xiaobai, it would be a heavy blow to Fong Haohan. I haven't eaten for 2 days, Fong Yingying said in pain. Fong Yingying reached out to slap Fong Yingying's head. Fong Yingying quickly dodged and said, Grandpa wants you to see him. Remember it. Fong Yen came to Fong Hui's cabin. The old man was sitting in front of the window, playing with the King Kong eagle in the cage. The King Kong eagle was majestic and beautiful, but it didn't want to open its mouth to cry. It looked very noble and cold. Fong Yen said with a smile, Why did you accept such an expensive gift? It's a gift from a girl, I can't hurt her, can I? This girl is really a villain. You know you can't accept her gift, but you don't want to return it, Fong Hui said confidently. Tell me, what's going on today? I don't know either, Fong Yen said helplessly. Qin Etian came to visit, Yi Rou also came to visit, so they bumped into each other. My mom said everyone should stay for lunch, and then everyone sat together for lunch. Fong Hui grinned and said, I used to worry that you were a football, and everyone wanted to kick you away. Now it seems that you're a basketball, and everyone wants to throw you into the basket. It's good to compete, it's good to compete. Fong Hui's eyes became stern and said, But, you have to deal with this matter properly. You can't hurt the girls. Our Fong family has been guarding the family and protecting the country, and we've never done anything wrong to others. I understand. Fong Yen bowed in acknowledgement. Chapter 416. Dear passengers, Flight YY60225 from Huaqing to Yanjing is about to arrive at Yanjing Airport. Perhaps it was because of the Spring Festival, but the number of seats on the plane wasn't ideal. There weren't many passengers, so the plane seemed a bit empty. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the first-class seats in the front cabin, and many people were still whispering to each other. It seemed that something interesting was happening. Chiba Hirobumi, who was wearing a wide-sleeved white robe, and Chiba Haomu, who was also dressed with a white ribbon tied around his head, were indeed very eye-catching. The father and son were dressed differently from ordinary people, and they were silent. Ever since they got on the plane, they had closed their eyes to rest and even refused the meals and drinks provided by the flight attendants. The plane began to glide on the ground, like a silver monster charging toward the castle in front of it. Chiba Hirobumi sighed softly and said, This is Yanjing City. This is Yanjing City. Chiba Haomu also opened his eyes wide and looked at the familiar yet strange city seriously. It had wonderful stories on TV, and there were all kinds of legends in novels. He was very familiar with this city that was becoming more and more influential internationally, but this was his first time setting foot on this magical land. It's also my first time here. Chiba Hirobumi said with emotion. 20 years ago, when I wanted to come, that man went to Japan first. After the battle at Hachibana Mountain, my confidence dropped to an unprecedented freezing point. I suddenly realized that the light that I was proud of and worked hard to shine in the world was so dim and insignificant. Have you seen fireflies? They also know that they can shine, and they think that they will shine brightly, but in the end, they are just fireflies. Chinya Hawu looked at his father in shock. He had never told him about that battle before. Even when he took the initiative to ask, he only said a few words. Today, he took the initiative to talk about it and analyzed his feelings at the time. Why was this? Just because he was going to meet his old friend again. Father, you didn't lose either. Chiba Hamu said. No. I lost. I lost. He single-handedly overturned the Dongyang Peninsula, said Chiba. That in itself is already better than us. Everyone had pinned their hopes on me, but I didn't have the power to keep it, so he won. They won with vigor and confidence. The Japanese men were speechless, and everyone was ashamed to talk about this person and this matter. This was also the reason why that person's matter was not known in Japan. Every time someone worships me and respectfully calls me the Japanese sword god, I feel guilty and uneasy. Then, he put more effort into comprehending swordsmanship and climbing the path of martial arts. Because I'm afraid to see their eyes. They think you're an omnipotent god. I've been comprehending the sword for 20 years. The number of swords I can use in my heart has increased, and the number of swords I can see in my eyes has decreased. Finally, I've reached the state of being one with the sword. When I once again set foot on Hua Xiao's land, filled with confidence, when I wanted to challenge Hua Xiao's hero using the same method that he had used before. When I wanted to win boldly and vigorously, I didn't expect to meet such an opponent. At the mention of Fang Yan, Chiba Haomu was burning with anger. His face was pale, and he said fiercely, "Does that kind of person deserve to be father's opponent? He won by cheating. It doesn't count." Ridiculous. Chiba Haomu's tone was unprecedentedly stern. A win is a win, a loss is a loss. How is cheating? What is cheating? The path of swordsmanship focuses on change and impermanence. If you don't even understand this, when can you understand the Great Way? I know you're hostile to Fang Yan, but if you have a wrong understanding of a person because of this hostility, then, whether it's in the past or in the future, the person who will lose will be you. Fang Yan risked his life to accept my challenge, stood in front of me, and fought me bravely and fearlessly. How many people in Japan can do such a young talent? I know what's bothering you. You think that he used some unusual means in the process of the duel, so I lost this duel unjustly. He even threw a bomb, Chiba Haomu said with dissatisfaction. In my eyes, what's the difference between a bomb and a rock? Chiba Haomu asked in return. It's a test of a person's physical fitness and reflexes. My reaction was wrong, so he took advantage of it. That's just a tactic. Compared to that, the long sword in my hand is even more intimidating. What if Fang Yan also feels wronged? He's bare-handed, while I have a divine weapon. Isn't that unfair to him? Father is good at using swords. How can the god of swords not use a sword? The sword in my hand and the bomb Fang Yan used are just auxiliary weapons, Chiba Haomu said. Fang Yan must not have thought that he could kill me with just that bomb, but I have thought that the sword in my hand can cut off his limbs, split his flesh, and cut off his head. Compared to the bomb, the sword in my hand is more terrifying. Chiba Haomu nodded seriously and said, "Father, I understand." It's good that you understand. Chiba Haomu looked at his son with gentle eyes. You still have a long way to go, so you must be open-minded. The bigger your heart, the greater your achievements. Yes, father. Chiba Hamu bowed. Chiba Hamu sighed softly and said, "What a pity." "What's a pity, father?" 3 dragons and 7 tigers, guarding the peace of Huaxia. Chiba Hamu said with a face full of regret, "I only know one of them, and the others are not fated to fight." "What a pity. 3 dragons and 7 tigers? They're just flattering themselves, aren't they?" Don't underestimate your enemy, White Azure Dragon. Is there something wrong with this name? Chiba Hamu said with a smile, "If that's the case, what is your father?" Chiba Hamu only now knew that the person who fought against his father was one of the 3 dragons of Huaxia, Azure Dragon. If that was the case, he really couldn't belittle this person anymore. If that was the case, what was his father? "Father, you can fight with them when you come to the capital this time," Chiba Hamu advised. Chiba Hamu chuckled and said, "I hope it's not too late." "It's definitely not too late," Chiba Hamu said firmly. He thought that no matter what, he would let his father fight with the 3 dragons and 7 tigers of Huaxia. For a swordsman who valued martial arts as much as his life, it would be a lifelong regret if he couldn't fight with the world's top masters. The plane stopped, and the father and son got off the plane first under the guidance of the stewardess. Walking out of the airport gate, Chiba Hamu took a breath of the cold air outside and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Father, what happened?" "The air is too dirty," Chiba Hamu said. They didn't have to wait for long before a black car with a red flag slowly stopped in front of them. Fong Yan rolled down the window and said with a smile, "Hurry up and get in the car. No parking here." Thus, Chiba Hamu opened the door and got in. Chiba Hamu was still hostile to Fong Yan, so he didn't want to talk to Fong Yan. Chiba Hamu, on the other hand, looked calm as if he didn't care about anything. "Thank you," Chiba Hamu said gratefully. "You're welcome," Fong Yan said. "I'm not a busybody. This is what I owe you. You're a man who keeps his promise. This is the glorious virtue of our Huaxia people," Fong Yan said with a smile. "That's what everyone says." Fong Yan didn't intend to take Chiba Hamu to Yanjing City. After getting off the airport highway, he drove straight in the direction of Swallow Dock. The snow on the road gradually melted, and only puddles of black water splashed by the car's tires. The wheat fields on both sides of the road also showed green shoots, weakly enduring the cold wind. "Please stop by the side of the road," Chiba Hamu said. Screech, Fong Yan stopped the car nimbly and asked, "Did you miss anything?" "No," Chiba Hamu said. Chiba Hamu opened the door and got out of the car, then walked to the middle of the wheat field. He walked very carefully, trying to avoid stepping on any green shoots. He took off his shoes and stepped on the ice and snow barefoot as if he was on a pilgrimage, seriously feeling the coldness and fertility of the land. The cold wind messed up his black hair and fluttered the corners of his clothes, but he closed his eyes comfortably. Fong Yan and Chiba Hamu stood by the side of the road, looking at his devotion to the land, and respected him even more. Chiba Hamu walked back barefoot. Chiba Hamu wanted to help him carry his shoes, but Chiba Hamu said, "No need. From now on, I'll be barefooted." He pulled a handkerchief from his arms and carefully wiped the mud off his feet, then opened the door and got into Fong Yan's car. Seeing Fong Yan looking at him with a puzzled look, Chiba Hamu said with a smile, "Each place nurtures its own people." Japan was an island country with strong winds and waves and frequent earthquakes. Therefore, everyone had a natural fear of nature. Their feet are unstable, and even the hand holding the sword has to be a little light. I've always wanted to experience stepping on the black soil with both feet, and trusting all my strength to the land under my feet. You don't have to worry about it being bumpy, and you don't have to worry about it hurting you. You're one with the earth, and this warm and peaceful feeling is really intoxicating. Huaxia is a place with great people. Only when the land has spirituality can a large number of heroes emerge. Chiba Haomu looked at the vast land outside and said enviously, Wasia people are blessed. Chapter 4:17. You've paid attention to the skyscrapers, you've admired the vast sea, you've admired the long river and the sunset, you've said that the green trees and red flowers are the surprise of life, you've even seen a flying insect or a snowflake, but have you ever paid attention to the land under your feet? Because it was too ordinary, it was easy to be ignored. It had been silent for millions of years and raised billions of people. That was its great power. Fong Yen was ashamed. If it weren't for the attitude of the Thousand Leaves Army, if it weren't for the love and respect he showed for this land, he would have been indifferent to the land, just like many other people. He didn't get close to it, didn't look at it carefully, and didn't release his emotions. It was like it was supposed to exist. Without experiencing strong winds and waves, without encountering earthquakes and tsunamis, without feeling the separation of life and death, and without being in a foreign country, how could he understand the true meaning of the land? The sky was the sky, and the earth was the earth. The sky was the father, and the earth was the mother. Everything in the world originated from parents. No matter how many miracles human beings created, they were just writing their legends. They were the origin of life. The spiritual space in Fong Yan's mind suddenly exploded, like a black curtain being torn apart, or like the scorching sun expelling the dark clouds above his head. The wind was gentle, and the sun was shining brightly. There was a wave of heat rolling up from the dantian of its abdomen, as if someone had placed a hot water bag there. Different from the past, this heat wave wasn't scorching. Instead, it gave people a lazy and comfortable feeling. The heart of Tai Chi rotated, and the Tai Chi field unfolded naturally. Everything in front of him changed. At the beginning, the heart of Tai Chi was three-dimensional, and the Tai Chi field was like a three-dimensional image. Birds, insects, and fish could be seen clearly, and even the slightest movement of grass could be sensed. In the fight against the Thousand Leaves Army on the top of the One-Sword Mountain, Fong Yan's heart of Tai Chi made a second breakthrough when he encountered a crisis. The original three-dimensional image became clear lines. For example, a fish became a fish-shaped line, and a flower became a flower made of flower-shaped lines. It was like a beautiful canvas that had already taken shape had turned into a simple and crude first draft. It looked like a step backward. However, Fong Yan knew that this wasn't a regression, but an improvement. This was because he was much more sensitive to his surroundings than before, and his timing and reaction speed were also much more appropriate and swift than before. Could it be that because of Fong Yan's new understanding of the earth and nature, the heart of Tai Chi was going to make a breakthrough for the third time? Seeing that Fong Yan was still sitting in the driver's seat, Chiba Haomu was about to urge him. Chiba looked at him and gestured for him to keep quiet. Chiba Haomu didn't dare to disobey his father. He could only stare at Fong Yan in confusion. Fong Yan's expression alternated between doubt and determination. Sometimes sad, sometimes happy. As time passed, the warm current in his dantian gradually subsided. It was like a hot water bag that had been used for a long time. As the heat was taken away by the body, the hot water bag itself gradually cooled down. When the heart of Supreme Ultimate stopped, the Supreme Ultimate realm disappeared. Only then did Fong Yan wake up, his face full of regret. Congratulations. Chiba Haomu said aloud. Unfortunately, it's still not enough. Fong Yan said with a sigh. I don't know where I'm lacking. I don't know when I'll have to wait for the next breakthrough. For us, climbing martial arts is much more difficult and dangerous than climbing high mountains and dangerous peaks. Some people persist for decades and only go from 0 to 1. Some people gain enlightenment overnight. Some people stand at the top of the mountain to see how beautiful the scenery is, while others stand at the foot of the mountain to see how majestic the mountains are. There is scenery at the foot of the mountain. Chiba Hawu expressed his personal opinion. It's better to have some enlightenment than no enlightenment at all. This failure will become the starting point for the next climb. One day, you will stand on the mountain and look at the picturesque scenery. Thank you. Fong Yan said gratefully. Although he was a foreigner, it was difficult for him to form the concentric seal. However, this Japanese's broad-minded and magnanimous way of doing things were admirable. If my heart of supreme ultimate realm breaks through again because of your words, then our fate is really not shallow. When I'm 100 years old, my descendants will write a book about me, and they will definitely write about you. The Grand Master of Supreme Ultimate, Fong Yan, has 2 breakthroughs because of the Japanese sword god Chiba Hawu. Chiba Hawu smiled silently and said, I may not be in your letter, but you will be in mine. That's fine. Fong Yan said with a smile. Remember to sign the book and give it to me. Chiba Hawu looked at Chiba Hawu and seriously reminded him in Japanese. Chiba Hawu was stunned and angrily stared at Fong Yan and said, Father, this bastard has no good intentions, I curse you to be unlucky. Chiba Hawu waved his hand and said, Unlucky is not because of other people's curses, but the arrangement of heaven and your own choice. Take note of what I just said. Yes, Father. Chiba Hawu had to agree. I will definitely give Father's letter to him. Don't let me down. Chiba Hawu smiled gently. When the car arrived at Swallow Dock, Fong Yan took Chiba Hawu and Chiba Hawu through the back door. He knew that this was a date between Chiba Hawu and the old drunkard. The others were outsiders, and there was no need to get involved in these things. Fong Yan pushed open the door to the courtyard, and a cold air with the aroma of wine immediately hit him in the face. Chiba Hawu greedily sniffed and said with a smile, Although I don't like to drink, I can still taste that this wine is good. It is indeed good wine. Fong Yan said with a smile. He brewed it himself. Then we have to drink a big bowl, Chiba Hawu said. I just don't know if Master is willing to welcome guests with good wine. Creak, on a rattan chair under the eaves, a man in a gray robe got up. Without looking at the 3 people standing at the door, he picked up the wine pot and took a gulp, saying, Friends from afar, how can I not have good wine to welcome them? There is a bowl on the wall, wash it yourself. There is a vat on the ground, wash it yourself. Good, Chiba Hawu said with a smile. He turned to look at Fong Yan and said, I'm here. You're here. Fong Yan nodded. He promised to help him meet the old drunkard, and he did it. I'm looking forward to your future. Chiba Hawu said, I know you will become a very great person. Although you are already very great right now. Thank you. Fong Yan sincerely thanked him in a low voice. You are also a very great person. What you can do, I may not be able to do. Chiba Hawu looked at Chiba Hawu, reached out to untie and tighten the white silk on his forehead, and helped him tidy up his collar like an ordinary father caring for his children. He smiled brightly and said in a gentle voice, You can forget me, but remember every word I say. Father, Chiba Hawu looked at his father in panic. Take care of mother and sister. Chiba Hawu walked into the courtyard and closed the door. Fong Yan and Chiba Hawu also wanted to go in, but they were blocked by the wooden door. Chiba Hawu's eyes were red. Fong Yan glanced at him and said, Your father, he is a very great person. Chiba Hawu stared at Fong Yan with a vicious look. He didn't understand what Fong Yan was saying. Chiba Hawu didn't use a bowl, but picked up a large vat. The mouth of the vat was facing down, and he opened his mouth to drink. After 2 or 3 mouthfuls, he coughed violently. He spat out the wine. He put the vat down and said while gasping for breath, "Good wine. A very good wine. Drinking such strong wine, drinking strong wine like this. A man should be like this." Chiba Hawu carried the vat to the eaves of the corridor, sat down on the ground, and reclined in the corner. He said, "There is a kind of wine in the East called chrysanthemum wine. Although the name is elegant, it has a strong smell of wine. Drink it like fire, drink it and you will get drunk. There are many types of Huaxia wine, too many to count. The one that left a deep impression on me was 3 bowls. I only drank 3 bowls, and I passed out. I was drunk for 3 days and 3 nights. When I woke up, I found myself sleeping on Rachel's bed. She was kneeling on the bed, and she had already cooked porridge for me. Speaking of women, we East Asian women are the most gentle, respectful, and obedient. Last time, I came and left in a hurry, so I couldn't be a good host. If there's a chance, I'll definitely take you to the most famous peach art club. Drink golden wine, hold hands, and enjoy all the blessings in the world. Northern women are bold, Southern women are romantic. Sioux women are graceful, while Hunan women are passionate. The 3 famous clubs in Beijing, the Capital Club, the America Club, and the Chang'an Club have many beauties. There are many beauties in the north, south, east, and west, all competing for beauty, and there hasn't been a winner for thousands of years. The old drunkard didn't want to be outdone. When it comes to beauties, Huaxia is number 1. That's very arrogant of you. Everyone has their own eyes. You're a fairy, and I'm an ugly woman. It's very normal. When I was young, I trained hard with the sword, and I saw a woman with the beauty of a deity. I chased her for thousands of miles, and finally, she fell in love with me. To me, beauties are like the stars, and I can pick them up with my hand. In order to challenge the Aikido master Ono Shinji, I fought his 13 disciples alone and defeated him by my sword the next morning. I fought 83 battles in a row, and won 83 battles in a row. I single-handedly swept across the East Asian continent, defeated the 12 warriors of the West and the King of Savages, and challenged the Green Dragon with undefeated might. Now, I'm the Green Dragon. The Green Dragon in white is awe-inspiring, and my sword shakes the world, and my roar shakes the 9 continents. Under my sword, who dares to challenge me? Unfortunately, you beat me to it. I heard that the 3 dragons and 7 tigers of Huaxia were guarding the peace of Huaxia. 20 years ago, I was prepared to go east, and defeat them one by one, to show the might of East Asia. In the end, I killed my way there, and you were so scared that you didn't dare to go east for 20 years. Not a single warrior from East Asia dared to challenge me. At that time, we were still young, and we felt that there were countless possibilities. At that time, we were still young, and youth is capital. Chapter 4:18. His classmate was young and in his prime. He was full of scholarly spirit and full of vigor. He pointed out the country and inspired words. He was once a marquis of 10,000 households. Have you ever remembered that when you were in the middle of the stream, the waves stopped the flying boat? One was Mo Qingdi, one of the 3 dragons of Huaxia's 3 dragons and 7 tigers. The other was the Japanese sword god Chiba Hirobumi, who was worshipped by the martial artists of the country. The 2 of them were not talking about cultivation secrets, nor were they discussing some supreme sword techniques. They were like 2 ordinary middle-aged men, competing to see who had drunk the strongest alcohol and bragged about who had played with the most beautiful women. They were like children competing and lecturing like perverts. If the outside world knew about this, they would be shocked. However, who could understand their sad state of mind at this time? It was more like mockery than showing off. Because what they were talking about was the peak of their lives that had been lost and could never return. They were like two injured wolf kings, snuggling up to each other to keep each other warm. Their existence itself was a kind of comfort to each other. It's been more than 20 years since we parted yesterday. The old drunkard looked leisurely, holding a wine gourd and pouring himself wine. He did not treat Chiba Hirobumi as a guest and chatted with him as if they were old friends. Although they had not seen each other for so many years, they did not feel unfamiliar. The friendship between gentlemen was as light as water. Perhaps this was the camaraderie between men. Fong Yen said you were coming. I was looking forward to your coming, but I was afraid of it. The red flowers bloomed and the green leaves withered. The cruelest thing in life is not living in a deep valley all your life, but when you climb from the deep valley to the top of the mountain with great difficulty, only to be kicked down by someone. What's the use of seeing a disabled person? Chiba Hirobumi put down the wine jar and looked at the old drunkard. Why did you meet me again? Because of fear, said the old drunkard. When I realized that I was afraid to see you, I had to see you. I don't believe in gods and Buddhas, and I'm not afraid of ghosts and gods. How can I be afraid to see people? That's a good reason, said Chiba Hirobumi. I'm the same as you. I'm also afraid to see you. But I still want to see you. Old drunkard took a sip of wine and didn't answer. He waited for Chiba to continue. 20 years ago, I was so confident that I could conquer Huaxia, but in the end, I was defeated by you single-handedly. I've been in seclusion for 20 years because I have fear in my heart. Chiba Hirobumi said. I'm not afraid of losing, I'm afraid of not being able to win. Every time I mustered up my courage and thought back to the battle at 8 Snake Mountain, there would be another voice in my heart telling me that I was very strong, but he was even stronger. You can't win. Again and again, he mustered up his courage and gave up again and again. Later, my son, Chiba Hawu, caused trouble in Huaxia and got injured. It was only then that I made up my mind to come here, not to avenge my son, but because I felt that I had to come here. Only after I personally fought with you will I know who the victor is and the difference between us. Otherwise, we can only live in fear for the rest of our lives. I understand. Old drunkard raised his wine gourd towards Chiba Shinobu. I salute you. Old drunkard liked to drink but never respected people. This was the first time in many years that he raised his glass. Chiba Shinobu took a sip from the wine jar, wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and said, this time, I still don't have the confidence to win, but I can't continue to wait, because I'm worried that the longer I wait, the less courage I have. I'll be trapped on the island for the rest of my life and never have the chance to set foot on land. I'm glad you came. It's an honor to meet you. Old drunkard asked, do you want to fight again today? Today, we must fight. Chiba Shinobu said firmly. He had waited for this battle for more than 20 years. He had also prepared for more than 20 years. How could he give up so easily? This was the demon that troubled him for half of his life. This was the cause and effect that motivated him to work hard. Old drunkard laughed and said, one has lost half of his inner energy, the other has no killing intent, why fight? To fight. Chiba Shinobu said. The battle at 8 Snake Mountain has yet to be decided, and I still feel regretful. I've always felt that you owe me one, and I also owe you one. Let's settle it today. Because you and I both know very well that after today, we won't have another chance. As you wish. Old drunkard said. Chiba Shinobu's dirty hand suddenly reached into the wine jar. His hand clawed hard as if he was grabbing something. What he grabbed was the wine, the intense fire-like burning knife. The wine was shapeless, but after being wrapped by his inner energy, it actually took on the shape of a rectangular sword. The long sword was pulled into the air by him, but the wine sword in his hand didn't break. Not a single drop of wine splashed. This person's control of inner energy had reached perfection, like magic. Chiba Shinobu held the big sword in his hand and slashed towards Old Drunkard not far away. A sword that shocked the gods and split the mountains. The wine sword was like an iron sword, making a sizzling sound as it was swung. The air in front of him was split open by him. The space appeared to be distorted due to his ghostly speed and majestic power. Puff! Old Drunkard who was sleeping on the chair spat out the wine in his mouth. Countless streams of wine turned into countless small swords that flew towards the incoming heavy sword. Bang, 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 the huge wine sword and the countless small swords collided with each other, producing a crisp sound of metal hitting stone. Pieces of the wine sword were cut off by the small swords. The falling swords immediately melted into a stream of hot water, then evaporated into nothingness. The heavy sword didn't change its direction, but its speed became more ferocious. It slashed towards Mo Ching-di with an indomitable posture. After tearing off some of the giant sword's body, the countless small swords also pierced towards the thousand-leaves soldier division opposite them like moths flying in a dense pack. Crack! The rattan chair Mo Ching-di was sitting on was cut in half by the wine sword. Even the green brick floor was cut into deep grooves by the sword energy. It was as easy as a knife cutting through tofu. Bang, 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 bang. Countless small swords stabbed into the wall behind Chiba Shinobu, leaving countless small holes in the pure white wall. There was a puddle of wine outside of each small hole. This was the reason why the chi inside the wine sword had completely disappeared and scattered around. Mo Ching-di disappeared from the rattan chair, and Chiba Shinobu jumped up from the floor he was sitting on. The two of them stood in the courtyard at the same time, staring at each other. Chiba Shinobu looked at the Old Drunkard and sighed. If it was 20 years ago, this sword would have been able to crush my heavy sword into pieces. It will be hard to see such a spectacle again, what a pity. You only have sword energy and no killing intent, why is that? Mo Ching-di asked in return. A sword without killing intent, its power is only 90%. Because I don't want to kill you. Chiba Shinobu said. That's a troublesome matter. The Old Drunkard said. Yeah, it really is a troublesome matter. Chiba Shinobu said. Your inner energy is less than 50% of what it was back then, and your left hand could have stabbed one more time. It was very hard for me to dodge. I couldn't dodge that sword back then. Meeting is not as good as reminiscing. The Old Drunkard said sadly. If they couldn't fight to their heart's content, if they couldn't do their best to kill each other, then what was the point of fighting like this? What was the difference between this and children playing house? They had seen too many extraordinary things, so what they were afraid of now was this kind of dull and lifeless battle. That's right. Meeting is not as good as reminiscing. Chiba Shinobu said. You want to die. You don't want to live either. We really think the same way. Chiba Shinobu said. The two of them laughed at each other. During the fight just now, Chiba Shinobu almost killed the Old Drunkard, but he stopped. The Old Drunkard also almost killed Chiba Shinobu, but he held back. They were both despairing people, so despairing that they didn't mind dying under the sword of their most respected opponent. We should drink another vat, the Old Drunkard said. Chiba Shinobu refused, saying, I'll get drunk if I drink any more. Let's get down to business. Once this is over, we can drink as much as we want. Then let's get down to business first, the Old Drunkard said. Whoever wins will have to drink to the winner. Then I'll have to trouble you. Chiba Shinobu sincerely said. Chiba Shinobu broke off a branch from the pear tree above his head, broke off the fork on the branch, then used this crooked branch as a sword. Mo Qingdi flicked his foot and caught a mop in his hand. With a flick of his wrist, the cloth straps on the mop flew off, turning the long stick in his hand into a spear. "Take this sword of mine," Chiba Shinobu said with an extremely solemn expression. "This is the sword that I've been thinking about day and night, the sword that gave me the deepest understanding in the last 20 years, I've always wanted to bring it to see you. This sword, I've named it Unintentional. Be careful." "Got it," the old drunkard nodded seriously. Chiba Shinobu moved. Chiba Shinobu clearly moved, but his body was still standing in the same place. That was just his afterimage, and the ball of mystery that looked like an afterimage was the real body of Chiba Shinobu. Because his speed was too fast, it created an illusion to the eyes, creating the illusion that Chinya Shinobi was not moving at all. He thrusted his sword straight out. Thrust his sword that was made from a tree branch. It was a straight sword, a plain sword. It was like a very ordinary man holding a tree branch and stabbing it at his enemy's chest. It was not fancy, not stunning, no sound of wind and thunder, and no energy. It was just a tree branch. It was an ordinary sword thrust by an ordinary person. It looked really disappointing. However, the old drunkard couldn't help but lift his sleepy eyelids. His confused eyes were filled with light. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. It was like seeing a pile of gold, or a piece of rare treasure. 10,000 swords as one. 10,000 sword techniques could be condensed into this sword, and 10,000 changes could be performed into this sword. Endless life. No change was the biggest change, because it could change in countless ways at any time. If there were no tracks, then there were no traces to be found. No sword will, no defense. After 20 years of sword comprehension, he finally thrust this sword. Chiba Shinobu deserved to be called the sword god of Japan. Chapter 419. If one's eyes were sharp enough, if one's eyes were the eyes of Mo Qingdi, then one would know how marvelous this sword was. At least in Mo Qingdi's eyes, this sword was not static and ordinary. It was not a branch, but a real sword. A peerless sword. It was trembling slightly, out of fear and excitement. Perhaps it was because of his birth. It was the sword that was trembling, not Chiba's hand that was trembling. He had stabbed out tens of millions of times. No matter what the situation was, his hand that held the sword never trembled. The body of the sword had a life of its own. It had an independent consciousness. It aimed at the old drunkard's eyebrows, eyes, throat, chest, heart, or abdomen. It could even attack the lower body of the old drunkard, piercing the 29 acupoints of the old drunkard and the 72 acupoints of the old drunkard's calf. It covered all the fatal points on the old drunkard's body, as well as all the acupoints on the old drunkard's body. The name of the sword was Unintentional. In other words, at the moment of the final attack, even Chiba himself did not know where he would stab. It was only a few tenths of a second, or even less. You couldn't blink, you couldn't breathe, and your heart didn't beat. The interval between one heartbeat and the next, it was shorter than that. Chiba disappeared from where he stood and stabbed at the old drunkard's throat. Yes, at the last moment, he finally locked on to the target he wanted. The throat. The sword pierced the throat. The old drunkard finally moved. The old drunkard finally moved. He rushed toward Chiba with the long stick in his hand. He left an afterimage where he stood, and his body turned into nothingness. In an ugly and barbaric manner, he raised the long stick in his hand and stabbed it towards Chiba Shinobi. The stick didn't even have a sharp spearhead. Their bodies brushed past each other. Or it could be said that two blurry shadows brushed past each other. It was just a change of position. It was just a change of the way they interacted. From standing face to face, they stood with their backs to each other. Chiba stood where the old drunkard had just stood, and the old drunkard also stood in Chiba's footprints. Then, everything became still. Their bodies gradually became clearer, and they became two living bodies, no longer a blurry shadow. The gray sky was like someone's black face, and the white world was so dreamy. Two men in loose robes with big sleeves stood in a small independent courtyard. Because of the small size of the courtyard, their figures seemed strangely tall and imposing. Just like the war gods of ancient times. The branch in Hashimoto Chiba's hand was dripping blood. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops, the red blood slowly melted the snow on the ground. The chest area of the old drunkard's gray robe was dyed brown with blood. Just when the old drunkard thought that the sword would stab his throat, the thousand-leaves soldier changed his move and attacked his chest again. There were only a few people in this world who could accelerate at such a fast speed. The wooden stick in the old drunkard's hand flew away towards the wooden door of the small courtyard. Like a spear, it stuck in the middle of the wooden door. Half of the stick went in, leaving only a short section exposed in the courtyard. "Why?" the old drunkard asked in a heavy voice. 20 years ago, I lost to you, Hashimoto Chiba said softly. His voice was soft and gentle, as if he was reluctant to leave and relieved. That's the reason, 20 years later, I lost to Fang Yen. That's the reason. Hua Xia is too powerful. Hashimoto Chiba sighed and said, Hua Xia is too powerful. 20 years ago, I had the ambition to conquer Hua Xia with Japanese kendo and make it more powerful. Unfortunately, before I could take that step, I was forced back by you. 20 years later, I gathered the courage to go east again. The result was even worse than the last time. I was defeated by a nobody in Huaqing. Fang Yen is a genius in martial arts, and there are not many geniuses like Fang Yen in Hua Xia. Even a young girl who is close to Fang Yen, with her talent, will not be inferior to me in the future. I still have hope after losing to you. I hope that one day, I will come back with a sword and wash away the shame with blood. But, when I saw them, I really lost all hope. There are too many talents in Hua Xia, and the young people in Hua Xia are too powerful. It's a pity that we don't have any young men and women like them. Not even one. God is so unfair to us. I've always been curious about what kind of magic the land of Hua Xia has, how it can raise its children to be so outstanding and brave. I'm alive, they see me as a god, as the hope of Japanese martial arts. I know very well that I'm not their hope. I will only bring them illusory psychological comfort and a temporary dose of spiritual medicine. This kind of psychological comfort and spiritual medicine can deceive them, can numb them, let them still have expectations and fantasies. I believe that one day, I will bring them victory and glory. The consequences of this are too heavy. You single-handedly fought against dozens of Japanese islands, your glory was boundless, and you completely trampled on the dignity of Japanese martial arts. You made Hua Xia the Green Dragon, but none of the Japanese martial arts came out. Everyone hid in their own small homes and licked their wounds. Our generation has completely lost. What about the next generation? When a young man like Fang Yen truly grows up, when he becomes an incomparably sharp sword like you, when he does what you did all those years ago, charging into the East Ocean alone with a sword, when that time comes, who among the East Ocean's youths will be able to stop him? Who can go against him? My generation has lost, bringing fear into the hearts of the young martial arts. If the next generation of martial arts loses, what kind of psychological impact will it have on the next generation of martial arts? Every time we lose, the morale will drop. After losing 3 times in a row, where will the morale be? Where will the talents be? Who will protect our people? Who will guard our country? Chiba of the army covered his throat and coughed lightly. Fresh blood dyed his palms red. Blood flowed out from the gaps between his fingers, drawing a delicate abstract picture. Don't underestimate your enemy. I really envy you. Envy that you were born in the Great Huaxia. Envy that you have this black land under your feet. Envy that you have so many talents. Envy that you are proud and fearless. How good would it be if Fang Yen was from our country? How good would it be if Fang Yen was from our country? If that's the case, why would I have to walk on this path of no return? Why would it be like this? The old drunkard said with a sigh. Only when you are alive will there be hope. Only when you are alive can you see a longer future. Living is the most important thing. From the azure dragon of Huaxia to the drunkard of today, the tendons in his hand are broken, and there is no hope for him to recover. The woman you love the most has left you, sinking your heart into a swamp, and plunging you into eternal hell. Every day you are sober is a day of pain. Every time you think, you are sad. I am such a poor person, but I still live. If I were to die, I don't know how many times I would have died. You are alive because you still have hope in your heart. Chiba Hirobumi said softly, I haven't seen you for many years, but I didn't expect that my old friend, who was famous in Huaxia, would fall into such a situation. Your meridians are broken because you believe that they will break out of the cage one day. The woman you love the most has left you, because you believe that she will come back one day, or that she has always been there. There is really no hope for me to live. 20 years after another 20 years, how many more 20 years can I have? In the next 20 years, when my hair is white, will I have the courage to go east again with a sword to challenge the heroes of Huaxia? At that time, I am afraid that I can't even hold the sword steadily, right? I can't save the Japanese martial arts if I am alive. Only when I am dead can they be completely desperate. Chiba Hirobumi said with a very firm voice. He believed in the future he hoped for. Only when people are at their most desperate can they burst out with unimaginable potential. I believe in the thousands of Japanese martial arts practitioners, and I look forward to their future. I know that countless young talents like Fang Yen will grow up among them. Only then will there be the prosperity of Japan and the resurgence of Japanese martial arts. Do you have any regrets? Regrets? Chiba Hirobumi thought for a moment and said, I hope that I won't be put on a pedestal by others in my next life. Because once I go up, I can never come back down. I just want to be a swordsman. Chiba Hirobumi's body slowly knelt on the ground, and then he lay flat on all fours in the snow. The wooden stick had pierced through his abdomen, leaving a pitch-black hole there. The white clothes on his body were dyed red by the blood, and the snow on the ground was also dyed red by the blood. White clothes and white snow had become red clothes and red snow. Chiba opened his eyes and looked at the sky above his head, saying, We Dongyang do not have such a land, so I will bury myself here. I will turn myself into a handful of dust here. Bless my people to have more strong men. Bless the martial arts of Dongyang to prosper. Please forgive my selfishness, Chiba Hirobumi said with a chuckle. Because only dying in your hands is a true liberation for me. I forgive you, the old drunkard said gently. The strong are lonely, and Fang Yen also needs an opponent to sharpen himself. We've agreed that the winner will drink to the winner, Chiba Hirobumi said with a smile. The smile came from the bottom of his heart, warm and peaceful. The old drunkard walked to the corner, picked up a large jar, and gulped it down. His head and face were covered in alcohol, and his stomach was filled with it. He poured the remaining half of the jar next to Chiba Hirobumi's head. Chiba Hirobumi smelled the rich fragrance of the wine and closed his eyes with a gratified expression. The Japanese sword god Chiba Hirobumi had fallen. Chapter 420. Little White was Fong Haohun's rabbit. It liked to eat vegetable leaves and corn chips. It also had a very bad habit of drinking alcohol. It liked to drink the shadozi in the old drunkard's yard. Every time it was Fong Haohen's turn to bring food and soup to his master or help his master clean up the yard, he would bring Little White over to have a sumptuous meal. At that time, it would drink the shadozi in the yard as it pleased. Every time, it would lie on the ground drunk and be carried back by Fong Haohen like a little drunkard. Today, as usual, Fong Haohen carried Little White over to help his master clean up the house. He also gave the alcoholic Little White a small plate of shadozi to celebrate its growth of 1 year. Suddenly, he saw Chiba Haowu standing at the entrance of his master's yard. Fong Haohen's face was full of vigilance. He immediately rushed to the entrance of the yard, stared at Chiba Haowu, and shouted, "Chiba Haowu, what are you doing here?" Seeing that Fong Haohen was full of hostility towards him, Chiba Haowu immediately put on a posture that made it seem like he would counterattack at any time. All right. Fong Yen waved his hand and said, "Why are you pretending to be a loyal and filial son? I'm standing here. If they want to do something bad, how can I let them in?" Fong Haohen chuckled. Both sides of his cheeks were deeply sunken. Even if the skin on his entire face was cut off, it would still be less than 2 ounces. Fong Haohen walked in front of Fong Yen and whispered, "Junior Marshal Uncle, these 2 Japanese, slap." Fong Yen slapped him on the head and said angrily, "He doesn't understand Huaxia language. You don't have to speak so sneakily." "Oh, then I'm relieved." Fong Haohen breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Why did they come to our swallow dock? Aren't they looking for trouble? I'm going to ring the alarm bell at the entrance of the village and get everyone to come and wrap them up like dumplings. They've all come to our doorstep and into our yard. Aren't they bullying us?" "Shut up," Fong Yen said. "Do you know what it means by heroes cherishing heroes?" "I know." In Fong Yingying's eyes, the most awesome person is Fong Yingying. This is what they mean by heroes cherishing heroes. Paw! Fong Yen slapped Fong Haohen's head again. It was impossible to explain things to these 2 little bastards. Fong Haohen dodged with the rabbit in his arms and said in a wrong tone, "I didn't say anything wrong. It's not like you don't know the condition of Master's body. They came here to show off, aren't they just making things difficult for Master? What does Master care about the most?" What he was most concerned about was that his meridians were severed, and there was no way for him to return to his peak state. If that old man, who was always pretending to be mysterious, challenged Master, with Master's temperament, he would definitely not refuse. What was this? When a tiger falls to the plains, it will be bullied by dogs. If he's so capable, let him fight you. Fong Yen knew that Fong Haohen was worried about the safety of the old drunkard, and the possibility of what he said was very high. Moreover, didn't the Chiba army come all the way here to finish the unfinished battle in the past? If the Chiba army challenged the old drunkard would definitely not refuse. Just like when Fong Yen was challenged by the Chiba army, although he was scared to death, even if he really had to die, he would not refuse. Some things had nothing to do with life and death, but with dignity. In the past, the old drunkard used to drown his sorrows with alcohol. If he was forced by external forces, the old drunkard would probably die to drown his sorrows. Such a proud man, such a glorious hero, had fallen into such a situation. Perhaps living was more of a torture than dying, right? However, even knowing this answer, Fong Yen still did not stop the 2 of them from meeting. Because, except for the old drunkard himself, no one was qualified to make such a decision for him. For such a man, what they needed the most was understanding and respect, not protection and pity. Fong Yen looked at Fong Haohen and said, "Is there any use in stopping them?" "No." Fong Haohen shook his head. "Then stand aside and pray," said Fong Yen. Fong Haohan stared at Chiba Haohan unkindly and said, "Since we have nothing to do, why don't I beat him up, who asked his father to challenge my master?" Fong Yan glanced at Chiba Haohan and said, "Whatever." The person he respected was the Chiba army, and as for this guy, he really did not have a good impression of him. He also knew that Chiba Haohan did not have a good impression of him either. If the opportunity was ripe, maybe this guy would stab him with a knife. Fong Yan was on guard against him. In the end, Fong Haohan did not challenge Chiba Haohan, because just as he was about to do so, he heard the sound of wood breaking in the yard. "They've started fighting," said Fong Haohan anxiously. He hugged Little White tightly in his arms, like an ugly little girl who had been frightened. It would be difficult to find a woman uglier than Fong Haohan. Chiba Haohan also heard the sound, and did not have time to guard against Fong Haohan's possible sneak attack from behind. He quickly ran to the wooden door, wanting to look through the gap. Fong Yan took a step forward and pulled him aside from the door. If the two men inside were to kill each other, this small yard would be torn apart by them in minutes. Even a branch or leaf flying out from inside could kill someone. Chiba Haohan ran to the door and lay down, and if he was not careful, he would be killed. To be honest, Fong Yan really did not care about Chiba Haohan's life. Because he had always felt that this guy was too narrow-minded and evil. However, if Chiba Haohan came out and found his son dead, would he suspect him of being the culprit? It would not be good to cause such a misunderstanding. After a few noises, there was no more movement in the yard. Fong Haohan looked at Fong Yan, and Chiba Haohan also looked at Fong Yan. Fong Yan's expression was solemn, but he did not say anything. He could feel the murderous aura in the yard, and the situation did not seem right. Thinking of all the strange things that happened when Chiba Haohan came, Fong Yan had a very bad feeling. These two people were not going to fight to the death, were they? Fong Yan became anxious and hesitated whether he should push open the wooden door and force his way in. Creak, the wooden door opened from the inside. The old drunkard stood at the door and first glanced at Chiba Haohan, then said to Fong Yan, "Japanese sword god Chiba Haohan, died in battle." "Father," Chiba Haohan had already seen his father's body lying in the snow on the ground and miserably threw himself over. Fong Yan's expression was gloomy as he looked at Chiba Haohan's serene face after his death. He was alive and well just a moment ago, but now he had become a corpse without breathing or a heartbeat. Life was impermanent, that was all. She recalled the first time they met. She recalled their battle at One Sword Peak. She recalled how he suddenly jumped up and pushed her away to avoid the shots of those flying people. She recalled how he stood under the osmanthus tree in the courtyard in his white robe. She also recalled how he asked her to stop the car by the roadside and run into the wheat field like a child. She then stepped on the cold black soil with her bare feet. "Father," Chiba Haohan put his hand on the wound on his father's stomach, but no matter how hard he tried, the blood kept gushing out. Not only from the front, but from the back as well. The large piles of snow in the yard were melted by the warm blood, and the melted ice and blood mixed together, forming even more ice water. The ice water soaked Chiba Haohan's body like a natural hotbed. As the blood from Chiba Haohan's body kept gushing out, the color of the ice water became thicker and thicker. The yard was filled with the smell of blood. Chiba Haohan saw the branch in his father's hand, so he grabbed it and charged at the old drunkard who was drinking from a wine jar in the corner. "I'm going to kill you!" Chiba Haohan yelled, looking a little hysterical. He was going crazy. He was going crazy. He never thought that he would encounter something like this while accompanying his father to visit a friend in Beijing. The man who was like a god of war in his heart, the undefeated hero, was lying in a pool of blood like his previous opponents. How could he die? How could he die? He was the Japanese god of war, his most powerful father. All this time, he had been under his father's care and protection. He was arrogant because his father was the Japanese god of swords. He worked hard because his father was the Japanese god of swords. He always felt that he still had a lot of time. Under his father's guidance and protection, he would definitely be able to achieve as much as his father. Perhaps even more dazzling than his father. But why was his father suddenly gone? It was this man who took his father away. He wanted to kill him, he had to kill him, whoosh, he was only halfway there when a large jar of wine suddenly poured over his head. The cold wine drenched his clothes and messed up his hair. Even the white silk tied around his forehead loosened and was about to fly away. Most importantly, it froze him from head to toe and sobered him up. His eyes turned blood red, and he stared unblinkingly at the old drunkard. His breathing was rapid, but his body seemed to have been immobilized, unable to move at all. The old drunkard didn't get angry. He looked at him expressionlessly and said, "You are a lucky guy because you have a great father. You are also a tragic guy because your father is too great." Chiba still stared unblinkingly at the old drunkard. He seemed to understand what the old drunkard said, but it also seemed like he didn't understand anything. The old drunkard shifted his gaze to Fang Yen and said, "He wants to stay and let his body become a pile of dust in Huaxia. If he wants to see the vastness and depth of Huaxia, then let him have a good look. If he wants to use his feet to measure the courage and foundation of Huaxia, then let him have a good look. Let him wear my shroud, live in my coffin and enter my tomb, a grand burial." Chapter 421. According to the customs of the villagers, it was a very inauspicious thing to hang a white banner in the first month. However, to the people of Swallow Dock, it was nothing out of the ordinary. On the eve of the Lunar New Year's Eve, the family would gather together to eat, drink, and happily welcome the new year. Then, they would receive a call from the northern borderline or the southern sea. Their family members had unfortunately died in battle. Everyone would silently put down their bowls, chopsticks, and wine glasses, and raise the white flags that had been prepared under the boxes. They believed that the white banners could summon souls. They couldn't retrieve the corpses of their loved ones, and most of the time, they couldn't even retrieve their ashes. However, they hoped that they could summon the souls of their loved ones back to their roots so that they could meet in their dreams. Sacrifice was the norm. However, this was the first time Swallow Dock had raised the white banner for a foreigner, and it was for an East Asian at that. Chinya Bin died in battle. According to his last words, he hoped that he would stay in Huaxia and let his body turn into a pile of dust. The old drunkard gave Fang Yen full authority to handle this matter. He also gave his shroud, coffin, and tomb to the Thousand Leaves military department. Yes, making burial clothes, making coffins, and reserving graves for the living was also an ancient tradition of Swallow Dock. Moreover, only the most respected person in the family would receive such preferential treatment and glory. These people could enter the ancestral mountain after they died, and their spirit tablets could be placed in the family's ancestral hall. Now, the old drunkard had given this honor to the Thousand Leaves military department. Of course, the memorial tablet of the Thousand Leaves military department could not be placed in the Fang family's ancestral hall. Everyone was worried that the Chinya division of the army would fight with the ancestors of the Fang clan after they entered. After all, everyone's habits and way of thinking were still very different. Fang Yen conducted the funeral for Chinya and hung white banners on the tallest camphor tree in the courtyard of the Fang family. Bai Huwei personally wrote an elegiac couplet for Hero Bai to hang on the door, a foreign guest from the Chiba army, a hero of heaven and earth, the Japanese sword god. Fang Yixing led Fang Hao, Xiao Qingxin and the rest to slaughter pigs and sheep, preparing for the feast. The old drunkard said he would give him a proper burial, so naturally, the Fang family would give him a proper burial. Banquets were an essential part of a grand funeral. Whenever there was a wedding or a funeral, the villagers had to be invited to have a good meal. The more extravagant and lively the banquet, the more it could be called a funeral. This was no different from the outside world. At the door of the small house, the teacher was holding a big teacup and looking in the direction of the Fong family. He asked, "What's the matter with the Fong family?" The Japanese sword god Chiba came to Swallow Dock to challenge Mo Qinglong and died in battle. After his death, he left his last words, hoping that he could be buried in Hua Xia and become a pile of dust in the earth. The Fong family is currently preparing for his funeral, Bai Xiao, who was standing behind him, replied softly. "How much power have you recovered from underestimating the enemy?" The teacher asked. "Less than 50%. How powerful is the Thousand Leaves army?" 20 years ago, they were evenly matched. After 20 years of comprehending the sword, the swordsmanship of the Chiba military division had become even more refined. 10,000 swords become one, he was almost invincible in East Asia. Those who saw the battle with Fong Yen at One Sword Peak said that he was a very terrifying opponent. If it weren't for Fong Yan's sudden breakthrough in his Taiji heart, it would have been very difficult for him to win this match. In that case, how did Mo Qingdi defeat Qin Yabing, who was at his peak condition with less than half of his strength? "He came to seek death," Bai Xiao said with a sigh. The Fong family values kinship and righteousness. They did a good job. The teacher pondered for a long time and said, "Hang my white banner." "Mr." Bai Xiao stopped him. If the teacher hung the white banner, the death of the Thousand Leaves army would become a big deal for the entire Swallow Dock. "Hang it." The teacher waved his hand and said firmly. Mr. hung the white banner. Fong Yingying ran to Fong Yen and said while panting. The Yi family hung the white banner. Fong Haohan moved to Fong Yen and whispered. The Li family hung the white banner. The Ruan family hung the white banner. The entire Swallow Dock was full of white banners. The Fong family hung the white banner because of the deep relationship between the old drunkard and the Thousand Leaves army, and also because Fong Yen and the Thousand Leaves army were both enemies and friends. The teacher hung the white banner because he deduced the truth from some unusual information. Heroes cherished heroes. How could the teacher's action not be a hero's? The other villagers of Swallow Dock hung the white banner because they began to pay attention to this matter and learned about it. Then, they respected and admired this foreign guest from the bottom of their hearts. Perhaps when they met on the battlefield, they would engage in a bloodthirsty fight to the death. However, this did not affect their favorable impression of their opponent. Because they were the same kind of people. If they were not the same kind of people, why would they meet in such a dangerous place? If they weren't the same kind of people, why would they give up their lives for a goal that seemed to be empty and meaningless? They could also live in a prosperous city like thousands of people, find a comfortable job, marry a beautiful wife, and have a few lovely children. With their abilities, they could live a more comfortable and safe life. But why did they meet on the battlefield? The news of the death of the Thousand Leaves army's father spread to Huaqing, and Huaqing spread the news of the Thousand Leaves army's death to the IGA One-Blade School. The IGA One-Blade School spread the news of the Thousand Leaves army's death to the entire East Ocean and the even more distant world of martial artists. In the dojo of the IGA One-Blade School, a long-bearded man with black silk tied around his head was silent. Several rows of young martial artists sitting across from him looked at the middle-aged man with serious expressions. Everyone, the king of our IGA One-Blade School, the sword god of East Ocean, Mr. Chiba Abe challenged one of the three dragons of Hua Xia, the Azure Dragon. Don't underestimate him, and unfortunately, he died in the battle, the black-bearded man said in a hoarse voice. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were clenched tightly. Boom, the crowd was in an uproar. Mr. Chiba Abe, did he really die? Impossible, How could our sword god be defeated by their azure dragon? He is invincible, it's impossible. He killed our sword god, we will fight him to the death. I don't want to believe it either, but this is the truth that I know. This is a disgrace to our IGA One Blade School, and a disgrace to all East Ocean martial artists. The man happened to lead the young martial artists into an emotional outburst. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Please practice hard, everyone, and in the future, our blood will flow in the Azure Dragon. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Wash the Azure Dragon with blood. Saka One Blade School. On the spacious dojo, a white-robed old man angrily stated this fact. Although Chiba Ababe is from the IGA sect that is our competitor, the East Ocean martial artists are one family. They were bound together for glory and bound together for shame. The Azure Dragon of Hua Xia killed our East Ocean martial artists, and if we don't avenge him, we will be in vain as human beings. Everyone, please work hard, and we will challenge the Azure Dragon in the future to avenge Chiba Ababe. Revenge. 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 The black-robed swordsmen waved the machetes in their hands and shouted at the top of their lungs. At the foot of Yamasaki Mountain, Koga Clan Ninja Village. Two men sat opposite each other in a simple thatched hut. One was a middle-aged man in black with several scars on his face, and the other was a skinny old man. It was hard to tell his age, but he was too old. His skin was so loose that it looked like it was about to fall off. His teeth had all fallen out, and it was difficult for him to even open his eyes. Chiba Ababe has fallen. This is the death of U.S. East Ocean martial artists. The bald man said angrily. Chiba Ababe has always been the totem of U.S. East Ocean martial artists, and also the hero in our hearts. Now that he has also died in the hands of the Azure Dragon of Hua Xia, our ninja clan can't turn a blind eye. I will go to Hua Xia to challenge the 3 dragons and 7 tigers. If I win, it will prove that we East Ocean martial artists are not weak. If I lose, then let me die on the battlefield. The old man opened his eyes with difficulty, and his loose eyelids almost covered most of his pupils. He carefully looked at the bald man in front of him and said, Kakuto-kun, it's good that you can make such a choice. You are indeed the pride of us Koga ninjas. As a jonin, you need to stand up in times of crisis like this. Go and see their 3 dragons and 7 tigers. I look forward to your return. At that time, I will personally crown you as the king of ninjas. Even if you die in battle, isn't it a kind of glory? Chiba Ababe walked a path that no one has taken before, and he made a choice that we don't have the courage to make. He is a hero, the soul of our country. You too. The bald man knelt on the ground, kowtowed 3 times, and turned to leave without saying a word. Clang, the door closed, and the oil lamp in the room went out with a whoosh. Do you know? Our East Ocean sword god died in battle in Hua Xia. God, I really can't accept it. Hua Xia has 3 dragons and 7 tigers, and each of them is a 1 in a million master. Azure Dragon, don't underestimate your enemy. 20 years ago, he broke into East Ocean alone with a sword and fought dozens of East Ocean masters. He didn't stop conquering until he met Chiba Abe, who was equally young and talented. If it wasn't for Chiba Abe, if it wasn't for our East Ocean sword god, all of our East Ocean martial artists would have been trampled under his feet. East Ocean swordsman, do you have the guts? Do you still have any passion? If you are not a group of cowards, then go and seek justice for our sword god. Kill Azure Dragon, avenge. Chiba Ababe's death provoked the anger and hatred of the entire East Ocean martial arts world. One after another, dojos and sects stood up. They hung Chiba Ababe's portrait at the door of the dojo, and they swore to avenge the sword god. Chiba Abe became a god. After the sword god, there was no more sword god. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.